Hello and welcome to a Florida Man 40k podcast. We have a special episode for you today for Florida Man Season 2. Welcome all our new and returning listeners. We are actually going to be doing a sister codex deep dive with Florida Man and
Sister Act 40k. Woo! Crossover
in
time.
The house.
That's right, a crossover with the Sister Act podcast. Rob Helton, Mitch Beard, and then of course I'm joined by my formidable co-host and fellow Sisters player, John Lennon. Welcome back, John.
I am so flattered that you described me as a fellow Sisters player.
I am surprised by that description, but we'll talk about that later.
It's fair. Very fair.
But no, we are all Sisters players here. John and I do bounce ideas off each other a lot, and that's what we're going to do here. The market is saturated with hot takes. And hot takes is sometimes a very diplomatic way of saying initial takes by people who maybe look at lists and rules in a vacuum, but haven't actually put it on the table or run it up against meta armies and meta lists. So we want to do something a little bit different, give the codex time to bed in a little bit, bounce ideas off each other. A lot of competitive players really talking about ideas and how they actually stack up against what's out there, because there's a lot of strong armies and lists out there, and we wanted to also take the time to basically let the volatile initial takes kind of see if they pan out. So we got some games in. I see what you did there. So these are going to be more of like lukewarm takes, and of course it wouldn't be right if we didn't have Rob and Mitch here to help us navigate these stormy waters of the New Sisters book. We're all very excited about it, and we're very excited to basically let you know what we've been thinking, what we've been finding, and kind of deliver that to you and help guide you and be your Sherpa up the mountain of sisterness.
Yeah, for those of you who are terrified by the talent level of this show, don't worry. We'll average it right down to something much more approachable for you.
That's right.
The average listener. All right, so to get started, we're going to look at the detachment rules. There's not a whole lot to say here. Worth noting that most units in this codex do belong to an order, but you should definitely pay attention because some of them do not. For example, the Hospitaller does not belong to an order. Engines of Redemption, i.e. Rob's favorite Mortifiers and Penance engines, do not belong to an order. And also random characters, like Vol does not belong to an order, Celestine, Stern. There's a bunch of random characters that don't. So please check your keywords so you don't cheat accidentally. But yeah, by and large, most everything belongs to an order, kind of as before. One little tweak, Ministorum Priests, so the ones that we used to call Preachers and Missionaries, cannot have more of them than Swarch's characters. So you need to make sure there's always sisters watching the regular priest for presumably lack of piety or battle discipline, not sure. And that's about it. Otherwise, standard rules like OPSEC and things apply. I think what's much more interesting now is if we want to jump over from the general detachment rules to the army-wides, maybe starting with Shield of Faith.
Sure, so I'll go ahead and take the lead here. Army-wide rules, specifically Shield of Faith. It's the, if you're played Sisters at the last book, you're used to this. Models with this rule will have a 6-up invulnerable save. But new and improved is the in the opponent's psychic phase, you can attempt to deny 1 power as if you're a psyker. This is a rule that we had in 8th edition. It was just you would deny on a single D6. Basically, you could use it to deny the odd low-rolled smite here and there, or if you chose the Sacred Rite for +3 to denies, you could really start denying some powers. This has been, I don't want to say a side grade because I think it's overall buff. You can no longer use a miracle dice to make this go off. However, you deny the test if you exceed it, or if you just roll a natural 6. So it's a 17% chance that it just always gets denied. And this can be improved. That's really strong. Morty or Magnus rolls a 11 for a super smite. Hey, just roll that dice. On there's a 17% chance, it just doesn't happen. And and there's other ways to deny and really mess with psychers too. So that is a great rule. Acts of Faith has returned. It is now our mono faction bonus. In the vein of 9th edition, a lot of books have a mono faction bonus where if you don't soup, if you're pure, you get a special thing. Acts of Faith is ours.
So
John, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take over the Acts of Faith here. So Acts of Faith is it's kind of the same concept as before, where it basically all revolves around Miracle Dice. I actually hate that they call this Acts of Faith, not just Miracle Dice. But you now gain Miracle Dice at the beginning of the battle round, same as before. Some of the other ways to get them are a little bit reduced. We'll talk some about that later. But you also gain a Miracle Dice every time you either get Vengeance or Sacrifice. Vengeance is when an Adeptus Sororitas unit destroys an enemy unit. So one or more units in a phase, you get one Miracle Dice. And then Sacrifice is if any Adeptus Sororitas characters from your army are destroyed, you get a Miracle Dice. And, there are other ways to get them, but probably a little bit less than in the last codex. Still, plenty of ways to get them. And then when you perform an Act of Faith, it's about the same as before, where you can substitute one or more dice on a given roll. Keep in mind that, charged roll is the only time you're going to use more than one Miracle Dice on a roll. But you can take one of the rolled Miracle Dice, and you can put it in before you roll for either an advance, charge, hit, wound, save, damage, or morale check. As Tim noticed earlier, the notable absence there is Psychic Test. You can no longer use a Miracle Dice to deny a Psychic Test, which obviously you used to be able to before. And as well, you no longer gain Miracle Dice from rolling a 1 on a morale check or from, denying an enemy Psychic Test.
Yep, I think this is a bit of a nerf to Miracle Dice from the old Codex. Obviously, there are less ways to acquire them now. You can't roll cheeky ones in the morale phase. Also, as before, you only get one per phase. So even if you kill something and lose a character, it's still just the one. As John mentioned, as we walk through the book, you'll hear us say many times, because we get less Miracle Dice now, a lot of the tricks we had from before are gone. It's much harder to get more than 1 or 2 freebies in a given battle round. You'll hear us say a lot that has happened, so we didn't introduce it early. But otherwise, they still largely work the same. If you still have 2 6s, you can still YOLO a 12-inch charge and kill heretics. So you still get to do that. You still get to mine salt from your opponent. It's still a great roll.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in here that I think were very small nerfs, but there's a couple other things I kind of want to call out while we're here. Notably, the Vengeance is when a Sororitas unit destroys an enemy unit, not a unit with Acts of Faith. So there's a couple things, like Penitent Engines and Mortifiers, or anything that has the Sororitas keyword but isn't, Mortifiers especially. I know, Tim, I know. They can still give you Acts of Faith when they kill people, even though they won't actually be the ones, making use of those dice.
I'd just like to point out, if Tim is the hype man for Mortifiers, does that mean that Tim is to Rob as I am to John, and therefore I am in some way like John Lennon? Because I'd be okay with that.
I mean,
I'm taking it.
Are you British?
Nope.
I mean, he lives there now, so just like
there.
Paltrow.
Just saying.
You've got me. You've got me, mates.
Hot take, man. Mortifiers, good in 8th, better in 9th. Let's keep chatting.
Penitent Engine stonks are up too. We'll get to those.
I do want to give. We use the word nerf, and categorically it's a nerf the way that people use the term. I am actually pretty excited about the unmodified 6. Even if we can't use a Miracle Dice for the deny, the unmodified 6 is a fantastic tool that you don't have to tech into for it to be really useful. Right? Yep. So before, if you really wanted to build an anti-psyker army, you had to think about null rods, you had to take the right, etc. And it kind of influenced the way you played. Now you just have a 17% chance, to Tim's statement, of just stopping anything. And maybe it's not going to stop that clutch play, but if you're playing against somebody who's using a lot of smites and they're just trying to mortal wound you off the table, that's still a fighting chance.
The only other thing I'd say here before we move on is that Acts of Faith being nerfed so that there are less of them, actually, while as a Sisters player I like having Works of Faith, I think by the end of 8th Codex we had figured out builds where you were basically swimming in Miracle Dice, and they really ceased to feel miraculous to a certain extent. I think when there's less of them, their usage feels higher impact in the game. And I actually don't mind it being more of an, oh man, moment when you used it. I think that's more thematic with what they're intended to represent. And from a fan of the rules and of the book and of the faction more generally, that actually doesn't bother me at all. I like them being higher impact than just I'm randomly making saves all the time. So
I would go off you, Mitch. I agree with that. It definitely got to a point where we kind of figured out, hey, we can just max out the threat range of our incredible melee and then we bring a little bit of shooting to kind of force the opponent into a no-win situation when they had to move into the threat range to potentially shut down our shooting, and then we just traded up into them over and over and over again. And this book is, and I'll say it multiple times, this book from a game design perspective, I think is the epitome of a rising tide lifts all boats. To quote my co-host Daniel Smith, they really kind of hit some of the highest highs, and not even really that hard, in my opinion. I thought a lot of our stuff got off very easy, but they raised everything else immensely. And the book is, in my opinion, a net gain. However, you will have to adapt, and if you are not a player who can adapt, this will feel like an unrecoverable nerf. If you are someone who really loves list building, though, this book is a playground.
And if you're somebody who likes net listing, just wait on the net list. They'll be here soon.
Yeah, my take has always been that I think that they took the one A+ thing that the last book had, and they kind of knocked it down a little bit, but then they took all of the C's and B's and brought them up to like an A-. So I feel like it's just across the board, there's a lot more, and now we kind of need to go and find out what the peak is going to be, because it's no longer as obvious as before. But I think that's just, much better for, long-term staying power and a codex's relevance if there's a lot of good stuff across the board rather than just one good thing, aka like Liquefier X that just got nerfed. Like, I would rather have this.
Liquefier X,
not to
rest
be
in
pointed.
hell.
That's right.
Yeah.
We won't miss them.
All right, so let's talk about sacred rites. So the sacred rites largely stayed the same categorically. So the same 6 names are there. The interesting changes is that Spirit of the Martyr used to be for whenever a model was destroyed, it could shoot or take an attack. Now it's whenever a model dies, if it dies to melee and is not destroyed, then after the attacking model has finished all its attacks, it suffers 1 mortal wound to a total of 6 per phase as a result of the ability. Aegis of the Emperor still gives you the +3 to deny. The only big difference there is previously we talked about the 17% chance to auto-deny with an unmodified 6. This takes it to a 5+, which is a fantastic ability that you should absolutely use if you're playing a Psyker-based army. Just bring the heat. Divine Guidance did not change. The Passion did not change. And Light of the Emperor changed a little bit, but not in a really meaningful way. So before you got to re-roll the dice when taking a morale test, this one instead, when the Sacred Rite's active, you can ignore any modifiers to the unit's leadership characteristic. And each time a combat attrition test is taken, you can ignore all the modifiers. I don't know if this one really influences army build right now, but I'm thinking this may be kind of a tiding of things to come if Games Workshop has more rules coming down the pipeline that vastly affects leadership or increases your attrition test. Instead of it being a 1 or 2 for a below half strength unit, maybe it'd be a 3 or a 4. That would stink.
Yeah, obviously we're Big Sisters fans here, but I think that the Sacred Rites was a bit of a miss from Games Workshop. So previously, Exploding Sixes, the Passion was the top dog, and then sometimes you would take Hand of the Emperor if you wanted speed, and sometimes you would take Aegis if you ran into Psychic armies and you ignored the other 3. That is probably still largely unchanged. Those 3 are still the ones you take for the reason you take them. Maybe there's ways to turn on them temporarily, so maybe you'll see a little bit of Divine Guidance. But I think, like John just said, a lot of the B's and C's became A-minuses. I think they remained B's and C's here, and sadly, I don't think Rights is in as exciting place as I maybe would have hoped. But that's okay.
I'm going to drop the hot take. I'm actually going to say I disagree. I will say that I do agree that it's not exciting. It's just a thing you get. But as far as I can tell, it looks like you don't have to actually be mono faction to get these anymore. So if you're running like Guard and Sisters, just putting some, Zephyr or Pencha with Exploding Sixes or +1 advanced charge, or maybe even both with a relic on the Sergeant, can give you a nice little counterpunch unit or something like that. I actually think, except for Light of the Emperor, which again might become more relevant as more and more ninth books come out, I actually think all these were an upgrade. So the I'll roll through them one by one. I'll let you know where my thoughts are. Hand of the Emperor, the +1 advance and charge rules. The book is down on mobility across the board. It is. You can advance and charge with 3d6 drop the lowest with the penchant, but they have to start out of a Rhino, so you're already down 3 on your threat range. Then you have to add 40 points to the cost of the unit to get a character, to get that command bonus. So already right there, a little bit of extra mobility, advance and charge, it's good, because you're out of the Rhino, your threat range is down 3, you have +1 advance and charge, the threat range is now up by 1, because adding +1 to your charge rolls still doesn't let you declare things outside of 12 inches. So that helps a little bit there. Exploding 6s, still great. Still one of the best things you're going to take, especially if you want melee.
Yep.
Aegis of the Emperor, having a 33% chance to just stop a power is incredible. It really is. You can no longer force those automatic 9s on the Deny the Witch test the way we could before. But if it worked the old way, this would be bad because we don't have the miracle dice to fuel those Deny the Witch tests. So instead, just every single time a spell goes off, something in your army, 33% chance it stops. And then you can use the strat afterwards. This is not tied to miracle dice, which we generate less of. And if we do have, we're not going to be able to spare to use them with this right. The old right needed miracle dice to function the way you expect it to function. So this is just, hey, after you do all the psychic test, they basically have to do a second psychic test. Because 33% of what they pass, it just fails. Full stop. Doesn't matter what you roll. You roll 11, I don't care. 33% chance it just stops. So this is a huge improvement overall. If you actually throw it on the table, remember to do your denies, especially when Grey Knights and Thousand Sons and Orcs hit the table. This is actually going to be very, very good. Divine Guidance. This sounds like it didn't change. It changed by the fact that everything it affects got better, and there are more things that it affects in the army. Our shooting is up across the book. A lot. You're going to be taking Storm Bolters for a certain strat we'll talk about later. Storm Bolters went to damage 2.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah, you will. Flamers gained strength. You're going to be taking a lot more Flamers. This works on the Castigator, which, by the way, has a ton of shots, and it's pretty pushed for his points, but really doesn't have any other ways to boost it or synergize it. Before, all our shooting was AP 0 or AP 4. There was no in between. And there wasn't really a reason to take multi-meltas and make them AP 5. You know what I mean? And you weren't really going so wide on bolters that you were willing to dedicate your... Because you weren't really, in a competitive game, you weren't rolling for 2. You were picking 1.
Yep.
And you were going to take exploding 6s, let's be honest. Maybe situationally, the denies, maybe situationally +1 advanced charge, but you weren't taking this. There just wasn't enough shooting in the book to really make it worth it. Now there really is. There's a lot of mid-range shooting, and that's where this really, really, really shines. Don't think about it as every 6 wound is an extra AP. Think about it as every 4th save or every 3rd save is an extra AP. Think about it from your opponent's perspective. It will force a lot more failed saves, so it's good, in my opinion. And then there is the one where you do mortals when you're killed. The old one was you could shoot or make a single swing when you died. That was situationally good if every single hole in the stack of Swiss cheese lined up. They had to be attacking the right unit. They had to not pull in such a way they're out of combat. It had to be in a certain order. They couldn't be based. Or in shooting, you had to have line of sight. You had to have range. All these sort of things. Now, if you have this, I don't think I would pick it, but if you're rolling for 2, it feels kind of viable now. It makes potentially, especially near mid and late game, you're playing with scraps and you're fighting like a big sister brick or something like that. Having a unit that is not threatening in melee all of a sudden start pinging you for a couple mortals, when you're literally just trying to throw, like, it's turn 4 and you're throwing scraps of your armies into each other, that is a real thing that people are going to have to kind of stop and consider. So for right now, the only one I think is truly amiss and actually hasn't been improved from the previous book is the Blighted Emperor, and that remains to be seen. Because, like I said, they might... It feels like Mean Girls, it's like, hey, don't make whatever happen, it's not going to happen. It feels like GW is really trying to make leadership modifiers happen. Yeah, exactly. They're trying to make fetch happen. They're trying to make fetch happen. This is their fetch. They're trying to make it happen. So maybe we'll. However, I do agree it's not exciting. It's not something that I'm really going to think about a lot. But I do think once you actually think about how the army has evolved and start throwing it on the table, I think people are being too harsh on a rule that we literally just get for free. And so I actually think these are probably like B plus, A, but it almost doesn't matter because you're taking them anyhow, you know? So I think they're good.
So something that Tim brought up, I do want to expand on a little bit. The sacred rites are included this time. If you soup your army, you still got to keep those. It's actually acts of faith and miracle dice that go away now. So if you decide to put your ladies with your favorite golden wearing transhumans, no more miracle dice for you. And the way the book actually handles it is it just calls out that you can't get miracle dice from any source. So, I mean, I guess technically you could do acts of faith. You just don't have any way to get the dice that make it function. So, GG Games Workshop, we see what you did there.
Well, that's actually... So I've got two things there. First of all is that I didn't actually catch on initial read that Sacred Rites worked for soup, which is cool because I really like soup. So now I'm excited about like my Garden Sisters again. However, the other thing is that I think that since you just don't generate miracle dice, I think you still get cherub dice from the Incenser Cherubs.
I think
those are not miracle
right.
dice.
Those
are not miracle dice.
Hot takes, everybody. You got to bring them.
Hot takes.
Got to bring your cherubs with you.
Yeah,
Games Workshop 0, John Lennon 1.
You love to see it.
Oh, you can use cherub dice on your dominions. There you go. You get that one spray of blessed bolts.
That one thing.
Was it worth the baby, Rob? Was it worth the baby?
Let's be clear. That was a person who stole a loaf of bread, so we removed their brainstem. We've talked about this.
We have come so far from the banners and babies quote the first time I was on the show.
By so far, you mean we've gotten way more weird about the babies and are now cross-polluting it onto other podcasts. Yeah, it's fine.
Still my favorite segment of the show was the entire cherub segment.
All right, before we do that all over again, we should move on to orders.
Well, I think that I want to call out, I don't know if we handled it, Mitch, the decree passive. I think sure. That's a new ability or a new requirement, I would say, that I think is a very interesting one. So now when you build an army, you can include a maximum of one canonist model and one missionary model in the detachment. You cannot include more Cult Imperialis priest units in this detachment than there are Adeptus Sororitas characters. And so that is just a new way, kind of like the chapter, I don't understand Space Marines things.
I do.
But there's some kind of rule about now you can only bring like one captain. You can't have 5 captains.
Damn it, does someone on the show understand Space Marines?
Oh God, if only.
Is there an expert somewhere in here?
It's the exact same thing as the captain lieutenant restriction, where you can only have one captain and 2 lieutenants in a detachment. But if you have multiple detachments, you can just sprinkle them in. They just didn't want a battalion to be here's 2 captains and a scout squad, like someone did in 8th edition.
John, while we have your expertise, can you also explain to us why Space Marines so frequently fall to chaos?
Yes, I can. It's the fact that they're all bald. Honestly, they're all angry about it. Sisters have these wonderful Bob's haircuts and stuff. Space Marines all bald, every single one of them. And you know what? I would be angry if I was bald.
So I'm checking the mirror here, and I can look at the web cameras of all the co-hosts, and I think we're safe here.
Okay, good.
Head check.
All right.
Let's
move on to orders then. I'll get us started with Martyred Lady. So Order of a Martyred Lady has largely stayed the same. So there are 2 bonuses you get now. Basically, all of the major orders give you 2 bonuses now. So the first of them is that at the end of any phase in which one or more Martyred Lady units were destroyed, you gain a miracle dice. So the miracle dice engine still exists. This is in addition to the character loss. So if you manage to lose an Order of Martyred Lady character, congratulations, you can now juice that for 2 miracle dice instead of 1. And then second, every time you make an attack with an Order of Martyred Lady unit that has lost at least one model, that has not come back to life, so no Hospitaller tricks anymore, they get +1 to hit because they're mad about it, because their martyrdom is like their whole thing. Their stratagem is also being mad about it. So for 1 CP, if an Order of Martyred Lady character dies, your entire army gets +1 to wound against that character. Used to be reroll once. I think this is better. Their Warlord trait is actually reads kind of neat. So if your Warlord kills something then you gain a 6 for your miracle dice for event instead of just rolling for it. And if your Warlord dies, you get a 6 for the miracle dice for losing a character instead of rolling for it. So if you can line up that perfect shot, then your Canonist gets better Miracle Dice. And speaking of that perfect shot, the relic for Martyred Lady, Martyr's Vengeance, is just a monster Melt-A-Pistol. It's a 12-inch, strength 9, AP4, D6 plus 3 damage Melt-A-Pistol at all ranges, D6 plus 3. So maybe you've got this Canonist. She lines up the shot, she smokes the tank, and then you get a 6 because she's extra great. And that is Martyred Lady. What do you all think about this?
I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to learn in real time from you wrinkle-brained co-hosts. When you just read through it, I realized something, and maybe this is what you said. At the end of a phase, as a result of vengeance, if the warlord destroyed any enemy units during that phase, the miracle dice is a 6. So vengeance can be triggered by any Adeptus Sororitas unit killing, right?
Yep.
So is this reading that if the warlord also kills a unit, then all vengeance dice are 6s?
Just for that one phase. You can only get one per phase anyway. As a maximum, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
I think it's just for her.
Dumb in real time.
You're fine. You're fine.
How do words work, guys? I was like, oh my gosh, kill 10 units, get 10 6s.
With one Canonist, she's just an extra shooting mode. Yeah.
I will give you a different take. I am a huge fan of the Canonist with an Inferno pistol. I find that I will almost always, or I used to always have a 6 laying around. And so if you're shooting at somebody, being able to just pick up a 6, put it down, then auto 6 the wound, and then roll that sweet Inferno pistol damage was nice. This is a D6 plus 3, and you don't have to be in melter range for it to do the damage. It's just D6 plus 3 anywhere 1 foot away. That's pretty outstanding. Is it the best use of points? Probably not. Is it fun? Hell yes, it's fun.
I actually really think Martyred Lady is cooler than I was expecting. I love their stratagem. The stratagem is what makes me happy. And also, yes, I'm going to take an Imagifier purely to yeet it into Mortarion on turn 1 and just turn 2 everyone's mad. It's like that's what the Emperor wanted.
Yeah, there have been a lot of talk about the Order's changes, and I don't think actually Martyred Lady has gotten enough respect. With Miracle Dice being harder to acquire than they were in the past, Martyred Lady having you a back door where basically every shoot and every fight phase you're probably going to get a Miracle Die due to their martyrdom, I think actually that might be more real than we think it is. And we still have the buff from before, where if you take damage but are still around, you get +1 to hit. That's still great. I think we might be sleeping on this one a little bit, actually, myself included, because we've been charmed by some of the other orders so far.
I like this one, and I know the new ones are exciting, but I do think this is good. Rereading to the Warlord trait, Shield Bearer, yeah, you only get 1 Miracle Die per phase, but it does sound like if you took this Warlord trait, the way I'm reading it, it does sound like any dice you generate at the end of the phase is a 6, which is, I am... With the way the new book generates Miracle Dice, that is great, honestly. The relic gun, it is funny. Especially if you get some rerolls. I mean, if you're hitting on a 2 and you're wounding on a 2, I think that's still a 69 or 70% chance. So there is some failure there, and then that's hoping that your target doesn't have an invuln. So hitting on 2, wounding on 2, no invuln, you're about a 70% chance of getting it through. Toss in some rerolls or something there, you can definitely make something happen. That is kind of funny. So sure, why not? Just try it out. If you don't like it, just take it out. It's not a big deal. I do like the order. I do like the order tactics a lot, because if you just take as your base a big brick, your several units of Sacrosanct, and then you take Junith. Now all those Sacrosancts are 2 up, 4 up, and they count as being in cover with Junith's new rules. And if they take any casualties, if your opponent tries to put some chip damage on them for whatever reason, now you can't really charge them, because they're constantly going to be +1 to hit. Or you can't get near them, Right now, Sacrosancts, not to get ahead of us, they have a very easy access to +1 to hit under certain conditions. But if they take any casualties at all, now they're just +1 to hit altogether. And the fact that you can't really get rid of them with shooting, because they'll have Junith nearby to give them cover, and you have to get rid of them with melee, but now they're permanently angry, I think maybe there could be something there.
I like that you're describing them as permanently angry, like Sisters of Battle, just
That's
walking around.
Sisters in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're just
permanently
calm, perfectly emotionally balanced people with no zealotry whatsoever.
No, my wife.
That's my secret cap.
My wife.
I'm always angry.
My wife describes them as angry ladies. It's just how she knows them as.
Yeah. I like to think about like a half-naked Repentia with a chainsword, like screaming, like, "Could a well-balanced person carry this?"
I'm wearing a basketball jersey and a chainsword. That is my war gear.
Unbalanced in mind and body, just as the Emperor demands.
I'm gonna paint a Repentia in a basketball jersey now. It's like Michael Jordan.
I like Murdered Lady, or I would call them the Ultra Ladies. I think they're fine. I am going to say that I'm not as excited about them as some of the other ones that got a little bit of a rebalance, and that may just be the newness of the codex. I think what they do is really cool, but I think what some of the other orders do is really cooler.
Briefly before we moved on, there was a Patreon request to rank the orders between how their fluff and their rules line up. I feel like Order Martyr Lady broadly hits the bill here. They get mad
Absolutely.
if you kill them, and they get scared if you kill them. They're all about martyrdom. Check plus. Games Workshop, check plus.
Well, they get mad if you kill them. They kill other people harder if you kill them, but also their internal secret desire is to die. So
As it should be.
Checks all the boxes are checked.
The only thing that doesn't have rules based on martyrdom is a relic gun with the name Martyr in the name. So I would agree.
Well, you're martyring other people.
Forced martyrdom.
That's right.
Any volunteers for martyrdom? You.
You've been volunteering.
All right, Valor's Heart.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take on Valorous Heart. I'm going to go ahead and kind of like lead into it a little bit with the fluff. I think they've also kind of, as much as you can in GW terms, I think they nailed it as far as the fluff goes here. But their chapter tactic is called Stoic Endurance. Every time an attack is allocated to the model with this conviction, AP1 becomes AP0, AP2 becomes AP1. They've lost the 6-up generic Feel No Pain, but they've gained a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds. I actually think this is a buff, honestly. I know that's probably going to get some. I can hear people groaning from here, but I like that our chapter tactic isn't tied to a mandatory character in an elite slot, no less.
Whoa, not a chapter tactic. Oh no.
Order conviction.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.
There you go.
Thank you, Rob. Hold them straight.
That's what I'm here for.
I'm one of those peoples that just says Auspex scan for every type of rule like that is like that in the game. Interrupt, chapter tactics. So
Transhuman.
I use a lot of short term here. But you're correct. Order conviction. I think this is a buff overall because Old Valor's Heart would lean so hard into making your shooting inefficient, and then you would run into something with mortal wounds and just be like, sad though.
Yeah.
Because the 6-up Feel No Pain just didn't quite get you there. Because Sisters are just elite enough where they don't appreciate mortal wounds, especially being on a 1-wound body. So having this is great. Also, I think with some of the new units they have, I think there's cooler things to use this on. I don't know if it's good. Probably isn't terrible, but Sacrosanct with this conviction and a Hospitaller backing them up for a 6-up Feel No Pain against normal shooting, I kind of like that. Is it worth building an army around? Yeah, we'll see. But it sounds cool. It's cool. It sounds cool enough where I would write a list, throw it on the table, and at least give it a fair shake or two.
I mean, anyone in 8th edition who played the Valor's Heart list and they got their girls in cover and they were Nori AP2 and the opponent didn't have an Orcs cover, you felt like a god when you were taking 2-up saves against like AP2 Avenger Gatling cannons from Knights and stuff. I feel like the juice, though, is the 2-up save. Now that we can get the 2-up save on a couple of units naturally, Sacrosanct Paragons, I agree with you, Tim. I think that this becomes quite interesting under those conditions.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And then the nice thing is MSUs we found out in 9th edition is very strong. So not being tied to a character is great because you also had like some people that would just bomb your character and just make you burn the resurrect strat to bring her back. And then you're still only tied in this one area of the board. You can increase it with a relic, but now it just feels like you are tying 45 points and a CP, a warlord trait, and everything just to make your chapter tactic work. I want a chapter tactic that works without having to dedicate all these extra resources into it. And being able to spread across the board and still get this effect, I like it a lot. It's also much better written than it was written in the last book. The last book, there was some kind of rules headaches about the interactions, especially when we transitioned from 8th edition to 9th edition with the new book. That is thankfully not here. I think this is ironclad rules writing for the specific order conviction. That's great. The stratagem is Blind Faith. As far as I know, this is unchanged, or maybe it didn't work in melee before. I think it might have been shooting only.
Yeah, it didn't work in melee before.
So now you just ignore modifiers. So I'm not really impressed with non-Valorous Heart Repentia. However, if you want to run them, you can be hitting on 3s with this. So there you go.
This is actually a buff because before you had to ignore all hit modifiers. Now you can optionally ignore modifiers. So if you're under a plus and a minus, you can choose just to knock off the 1.
That's a great point. That's a net gain of 2.
And also, I'm leading in a little bit, but Retributors no longer can move and shoot without penalty. If you come in from the board edge, even if you normally ignore that, you still don't get it. So the only way to outflank with a Retributor and hit on a 3 right now is with Blind Faith as Valorous Heart. So that's a thing.
There you go. So yeah, I think this is nothing too flashy here, but overall an improvement and a good solid stratagem for 1 CP. The Warlord trait, Impervious to Pain. Each time this Warlord performs an act, it regains a wound. Each time the Warlord would lose a wound, roll 1d6. On a 5 up, that wound is not lost. It's cute. I think Sisters characters are known for being hard to get at anyhow. So I feel like this could potentially be a trap where you run it and then maybe combine it with the relic, and then you end up doing really not strategically advisable things to try to make this happen. And it's kind of like, why are we going out of our way to try to tempt fate here? So
I feel personally attacked.
I mean, if you want to do it, it's fun. But I mean, like, a Canoness has 5 wounds, so like, what if they just kill you?
All right.
It's cute. I think if you want to run it, by all means, go ahead. I think there are better places you could spend your Warlord traits and your stratagems personally. But it is very fitting.
Hey Siri, remind me to tell Tim Penny he's wrong when we get to the Iron Surface of Saint Nestelia in the relic section.
I would rather buy a different Warlord trait somewhere else and then buy that relic if you're really trying to make this happen. But we'll get to there.
Let's talk about the relic.
Yeah,
I
speaking of relics, the Casket of
relic.
Penance. I'm gonna steal a quote from Mob Rules when they did their review of the Codex. It's like they have a box with like uranium in it or something. They're like, hey, look what I found, and everyone gets less tough around it. I think that's hilarious. So they just have like, I don't know, they just have like a little box of plutonium. Everyone within 3 inches of the bearer gets -1 toughness. If you're Chaos, -1 strength as well.
Get wrecked.
I don't know. I think we could potentially see like a dual order build that really kind of makes some funny stuff happen here with like Bloody Rose and Valorous Heart. I think with shooting, it's a little too hard to set up. But it is, as far as I know, it's the only real way to get this effect in the book. And anytime you have a strong rule or strong ability and only one way to get it, there's a bottom floor of how bad it can be. So I think there is potentially builds that could leverage this. I just don't think it would be a generic build.
Yeah,
remember,
3 inches is a lot more than the 1 inch in the old book. You can now get close and shoot, so that is a thing on the menu.
Yeah, it hasn't been improved. So going back to the orders of the Patreon questions, Valorous Heart is very much all about penitence because they were, unwillingly, kind of tricked. I'm trying to remember his name. Mitch and Rob, you'll have to help me out here.
Goja Van Dyke.
Yes, him. So they were unwillingly tricked into helping him, and so basically they are kind of forever penitent for that reason. And their whole thing is stoicism and forbearance. And in GW terms, people who don't have a sense of humor are automatically more durable to shooting immortals. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. So if that is their definition of the fluff, I think they nailed it. They're very serious, and because they're serious, they bullets just bounce off them. What do you guys think?
I'm down with that. I personally think if you're playing full Valorous Heart, all your models can't wear helmets. They don't need them.
Yep, they have faith.
They have faith.
Agreed.
Good enough for me.
Rod's modeling tips. Yeah.
I enjoy the order. I think that there's going to be some interesting uses for them as the edition continues to develop. My favorite part that I'm thoughtful about is the mortal wounds, 5 up to prevent mortal wounds, but also you said it best, Tim, just iron job editing and writing this rule to be clear around how armor penetration works for Valora's Heart. A+ effort, GW, thank you.
Bloody Rose?
Bloody Rose. I'll do this one because this is obviously the easiest one to get through. They didn't
That's
change
not why we
except
gave
for
it
their
to you.
shooting. No, so Bloody Rose, they did shift a little bit. I'll go ahead and handle the lore part. They are still barbed wire beat sticks. If you are thinking about bringing Bloody Rose for all your melee needs, you are encouraged to do that again in this edition. So from the perspective of their order trait, anytime they have a conviction, if they were charged, made a charge, heroic intervention, etc., then they get to add 1 to the attacks characteristic. That's all good. Each time they make a melee attack, if they were charged or made a heroic intervention, AP goes up by 1. So that's not changed. The big difference is that they lost the AP 1 to shooting. And so
On pistols,
there's a little
yeah.
bit of on pistols. So there's a little bit of a unfortunate downplay then to Seraphim when we talk about them a little bit later. From the perspective Tear Them Down, I actually think Tear Them Down got a buff, and I'll watch for my math brain friends to agree with me. It used to be whenever you use Tear Them Down, you got a +1 to wound. Now, instead, each time a model in the unit makes a melee attack, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically wounds the target. And so this has a lot more use against transhuman armies that are out there because the transhuman has to be an unmodified 4, 5, or 6. So Tear Them Down gave you not as much mileage since it modified the dice. This is any unmodified 6 automatically wounds. Mitch,
Yeah, so the rough math on this is... if you were already hitting pretty good and not under transhuman, +1 wound is better. Like you went to a 4 to a 3 or a 3 to a 2. But with anything that you hit on typically a 5 or better to wound, like if you're smacking Zephyr into a tank, for example, then this is actually superior. The other thing to note is we have quite a good bit of access to reroll to hit
wounds
now in the new book. And so chances to reroll to hit to fish for those 6s is also kind of neat. And just rerolling those misses into maybe 6s, I think this might actually be a better stratagem in the context of the new book. But also, who cares? The old one's gone. This is all you got now, Bloody Rose. Yeah.
This is also kind of nice if your opponent has modifiers to be hit, because the unmodified 6s are putting those wounds through.
So for the Warlord trait, Blazing Ire, you get +1 to your attack characteristics, and then you can charge when you advance. And then Beneficence, my beautiful, beautiful Beneficence. Oh,
My baby.
The big change here is Beneficence now is damage 1.
Yeah.
They do make a call out though for the abilities that each time you fight, you make 3 additional attacks. However, if there are 6 or more enemy models within 3 inches, you get D3 + 3 attacks. So it still blends, it will still kill. It's not quite the must-have for your Bloody Rose Canoness as it was in the last edition.
It's also strength 5 instead of strength 4. A little better in that way. But yeah, she's not picking up 5 Vanguard veterans anymore without breaking a sweat, sadly.
Yep.
I think one other very small change for Bloody Rose that I noticed. I'm pretty sure that last codex, the AP modifier on your combat was not reliant on having charged, and now it is.
It was not. Yep.
So that's not very relevant. You're normally charged or getting charged, and if you're just in protracted combats, usually people have run away from you by now, but it could come up.
Yep. I think Bloody Rose is perfectly fine to catch a nerf. They were head and shoulders the best order. In the old book, the question was, should I run something with my Bloody Rose? I think them catching a nerf and buffing the other orders gives more internal balance, which I think is appreciated, at least by me and a lot of other Sisters players I've talked to. I think they're still great. I think it's still very hard to say, why am I not taking Bloody Rose if I'm taking Zephyrim, Seraphim, heck, even Battle Sisters, Celestian Sacrosands. There's a lot of really good combat units in this book, and it's very hard to say no to them, even now. So,
They got off.
I'm glad they're still published.
Very easy, in my opinion. They're still really good.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Let's
any other
roll
thoughts?
on.
Yep.
We already went over their lore, right?
Yeah, Bloody Rose is completely in line with its lore. Dani Ware would be very excited about how her order continues to murder face everything in the name of the Emperor.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Ebon Chalice then. Let's start with the lore here. So, everyone thinks of like the Martyred Lady as like the main sisters, you know, not chapter. I was about to say chapter, but of the main sisters order. So it's funny is that like the Ebon Chalice is actually like I think they're the first of the orders that were established. So they're kind of like the OG ones, and that actually makes a little bit of sense because you normally think of like the OG chapter as or chapter equivalent in a lot of other factions as the one that modifies the faction role. Like Mars modifies Canticles. You know, there's always like the main one. They modify that like that chapter, that faction special role. And sure enough, Ebon Chalice's thing is that when you determine sacred rites, you're not allowed to roll 2. Instead, you pick 1 for the army, and then you pick a second one for all of your Ebon Chalice units. So in that way, it kind of reminds me of the old Canticles with Mars. And then as well, Ebon Chalice does keep their same Miracle Dice modification as before, where anytime they're about to use a Miracle Dice, they can first discard an additional Miracle Dice, and then the one that they use becomes a 6, irrespective of whatever the dice actually shows. So this is one that was kind of exciting me, but then in the context of we might be running low on Miracle Dice, got a little bit less exciting. But Double Sacred Rites is really cool, especially, again, as Tim pointed out, in the context of Soup, where perhaps you have, Ebon Chalice and something else, like, let's say Imperial Guard, you still get your Double Sacred Rites, even though the Miracle Dice part of this is obviously not being used. I think, this is hard. I think this is one that you really need to test it to get the value, because it's hard to put your finger on how many Miracle Dice you're going to have in a given game. I think that's an experience thing. But
can I give you? Oh, sorry, John. Can I pitch you on the opposite real quick?
Do it.
If you are getting few Miracle Dice and both of the ones on the table are 1s, this is the only way to updo to dice to a 6 every turn.
Mm-hmm. And that part is really nice. Something I was looking at, and I don't think it actually works, but I would love it if GW actually would FAQ it. Was I know, right? It's something that you never say out loud with a straight face. There's a couple ways that we'll kind of cover later, such as Beacon of Faith and Warlord trait, that lets you generate a Miracle Dice, and it can only be used in certain situations. And I just really want to know if that Miracle Dice can be discarded in order to Ebon Chalice into a 6. Because I would really like that. And I think the consensus is that John stopped trying to cheat, but I would just like GW to just print no, just so that I can stop thinking about it. Or print yes, actually. I'd prefer that if they just said yes.
Oh, that is an interesting read. You know what? I did not think through that. That's a really great question. I can see that one coming up.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning. But I think the conservative ruling is, not to take advantage of it, but hopefully GW will just make that easy. They do have a pretty good stratagem as well, Cleansing Flames, 1 CP. It's a Flamer specific one. You basically add 4 inches to the range of all flame weapons that unit is shooting with. And as well, anytime you roll an unmodified 4+ to wound with a flamer weapon from that unit, then you do a mortal wound in addition to normal damage, but it's a max of 3. Realistically, chipping in 3 mortal wounds, I would have loved, a max of like 6 or a max of 20. But let a girl dream. The +4 inch range is really nice, going from a traditionally 12 to a 16-inch on flamers, especially because Retributors lost the boost to their range that they used to inherently have for heavy flamers. Seems pretty useful. Also, if you've got like 2 or 3 flamers in a squad, that's the point where this is basically just an automatic 1 CP, here's 3 mortal wounds. And that feels like it could be useful. Like I think you could take a 5-girl sister squad and toss in a flamer, combi flamer on a girl and a sergeant.
Or a flamer and a hand weapon if you don't want to advance.
Yeah, or just a normal hand flamer. And that seems like a pretty good, pocket mortal wounds to throw at someone, just in case you really want to do a lot of mortal wounds. There's a couple of these sprinkled through the book, and I don't think any one of them is super powerful, but, there is a point where you look at it and you've got 5 different pocket sands to throw at someone in a turn, and suddenly, Magnus is dead.
Yeah, I think
somewhere Seraphim too, right? Seraphim walk around with 4 hand flamers very often, so that's an easy 3 mortals.
I think
and that's also a great unit to extend the range on because they deep strike. It's very easy to deep strike out 12 inches, or to screen out 12 inches of range, but it's like, oops, 16 inches. Now I'm hitting the unit behind the screen, and also here's a couple mortals to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that as an extending range. Their warlord trait is honestly one of the best things ever. It's CPU regen. It's like a 5-up CPU regen, which is amazing. Each time you spend a command point, you know what? Roll a d6 on a 5-up, you get it back. But the other good part of this is, of course, that the first Miracle Ice you get at the beginning of the battle is that's a 6. That one's just a 6. So starting with a 6 is cool if you want to make some early game plays. Scout move up some rhinos, whatever you're doing. There is the caveat that your warlord has to be on the battlefield, but I cannot imagine the poor fool who's going to take this warlord trait and then reserve their warlord. And it's like, what,
Genius.
What were you, what have you done?
Genius.
No, let's hope no one falls for that. That's the biggest dull moment I've ever heard of. This one's really good. The warlord trait has a lot of appeal. I think that both the strat and the trait are kind of good, and you can see the use, but also not A+. And then, of course, they do have a relic as well. I'm sure someone on this podcast...
Oh, yeah, they do.
Tim. Before I even read this to you, I'm just going to tell you that Tim is going to come in here afterwards and say, actually, hot take, this is useful because this is a relic. Crossbow.
I'm already primed and ready.
Yeah, this is a relic crossbow, where it's the Condemner bolt gun, which is, I only remember the name of because it says that I have to have one. It's a rapid fire 1 weapon, but it also has a combi profile. So its rapid fire profile is literally just a bolt gun. It's just a bolt gun. And then the blessed stake that it fires is 24 inches, assault 1, strength 4, AP 2, damage 2. And each time you allocate a target for this weapon, you can ignore... let's see, what is it?
There it is.
You can fire both profiles like a combi weapon. So you can fire both profiles like a combi weapon. And if you do both, you subtract 1 from the hit roll. You can ignore Lookout Sir when you shoot with this, not just against psychers, against everything. And then if an attack with this weapon's blessed stake profile is allocated to a psyker model, that model's unit suffers 3 mortal wounds in addition to the normal damage. And you know what? Let's actually break down what that means.
Yes.
So when an attack
is
allocated...
This is where I was about to jump in.
Allocated.
All right. When an attack is allocated, happens in between the wound roll and the save roll.
So you have to hit, you have to wound, and then they have to hit,
you have to wound.
And then it lands.
So you know what? I don't want Tim to talk. So let's say that you have your Canoness and you decide that you're gonna spend a Miracle Ice, spend a 4, whatever. Spend a 4, and you're gonna spend a command point as well, so that you use that 4 for both the hit and the wound. And all of a sudden, you just do 3 mortal wounds to that poor Grey Knight. The poor Grey Knight. And he's just sitting there with his 1 wound strike squad. It's like, boy golly, I hope this 1 bolt gun can't kill 5 models in one go. Oh yes it can.
At that point, the battle sisters run over, pick up the blood, and cover their armor with it for extra protection.
Oh gosh.
Never forget.
There.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, Tim, what did I miss?
Tim, you're on mute, bud.
You've shamed him.
Sorry, I had to step away to grab my son. Yeah, no. So that is on me. I misunderstood, and I thought when you allocated, I misunderstood it as targeted. So it's definitely much less good if it comes to where the opponent is allocating the saves. So definitely much less good in that take. I thought it was when you target it, they just take 3 mortals. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why wouldn't anyone take this? So definitely, I'd say
Tim, I was there with you.
Yeah, with this revelation, I'd say you can go ahead and pass. If it was when you target a unit, they take 3 mortals. By all means, take it. But the fact that you have to get a hit and wound roll through, I think there's enough sources of mortal wounds in the book that you can probably safely pass on this one, before we even talk about the psyker keyword that's required.
I mean, I like the idea of just auto-killing an an astropath? Like, what other 3-wound psychers are there? Like, that astropath is so dead, just crossbow through the heart.
The astropath is really warping the meta right now.
Every round just runs somebody's day.
Take this in a team tournament, you just beg your captain for the one guy with the astropath, like, please, please, please.
I prepared for this day.
I've been training for this my whole life.
Just like
Rob, what do we think about the fluff? Does this line up?
It does line up. I think that, and I really enjoyed John's take. I hadn't thought about how the OG sub-faction, order, chapter, etc. typically modifies your base ability. But yeah, I think that's good. This lines up very well with Ebon Chalice. I am going to be honest, I'm happy they took away the 5-up Feel No Pain, because that felt like it was just them getting something. It wasn't actually flavorful or thoughtful. I really enjoy that they're now getting the stratagem refund. Ebon Chalice is a very thoughtful group. They're trained tactical. They're not crazy nuns wearing basketball jerseys killing each other with chainswords.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with it, but they're supposed to be the more balanced, noble type order. So I think this is very sensible. I like this one.
Maybe I'm just down on Ebon Chalice fluff generally for being we're the best without real explanation, and therefore I'm down on any link to something boring. But yeah, I just don't. I think they're cool rules wise. I just don't think that screams any particular trait or behavior.
I'm gonna go. I agree with you, but I also think that this is more flavorful. This is a more flavorful interpretation that feels better than just here's your 5-up Feel No Pain, pat on the head, you get a 6. Take care.
Yeah.
Oh, and P.S. they're double sacred rites. I do think that is a gravy boat of fun, especially if you're souping. You can get the passion and the +1 advanced charge, and still bring a boatload of girls to go have fun.
I think it actually lends itself more towards a, obviously I mentioned it in soup, but it really lends itself more towards this one detachment is responsible for both my shooting and my melee. Because a lot of people, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people are like, I'm going to take my Bloody Rose, Chainsword ladies and my Argent Shroud Melta ladies. And I think that the fact that you could take, exploding 6s in combat while still getting, extra AP on 6s on all your bolter units actually does make it kind of cool. Because I feel like I feel like it's going to be very rare for someone to just pick, every 6 to wound is extra AP, because you want to have one of the other ones a little bit more. But getting to get a second choice really helps a lot of the not exploding 6s be relevant.
The non-passions, yeah.
Yeah, the non-passions, the unpassionate sacred rites actually might matter now. Because, I've never really cared about which one is second best and which one is sixth best, because they're all not passion. But this gives me a reason to actually read them.
Quick question, and this may be a math question for later, if you guys have your scratch pads out. Are Ebon Chalice sisters, or just, I guess, sisters in general, the better sisters versus Sisters of Silence, with the change to the deny being automatic on a 6 and being able to tech into Sacred Rites for your rolls? Because Sisters of Silence can have a -1 per squad, so if you want to max it out, you'd have to bring 3 or 4 squads, so that's a pretty heavy cost. Sisters of Battle are relatively cheaper, and I think maybe they're the better deniers.
So
I think this is better in
statistically,
every way.
yeah, statistically, if you look at a 2d6 roll, there's no -1 modifier on that beats a 1 in 3 chance of being shut down. The worst that happens is going from a 7 to a 6, right? That's when you see the biggest reduction in likelihood, and that's nowhere near that. So being able to just straight say no on a 5-up is just brutally better. We also have that 4-up deny stratagem you can just drop on afterwards if you flub the 5-up roll. If you combine those, you end up with a 33% chance of success. You can just pour cold water all over their heretic brain bullets. So
So what just happened is I was like, Rob Helton had a thought. What do you think? And Mitch is like, yes, the mathematics are obvious, Rob.
No. It's a good question. It's a good question.
You're my human abacus. I enjoy you greatly.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, shall we move on to the Argent Shroud?
Order of the sheet.
Order of the sheet. All right. Order of the Argent Shroud. So Argent Shroud's deal is deeds, not words. So basically, they're the less talky, more shooty order. The ones probably most disinclined to follow ecclesiarchical, say like religious practices, like running around with incensors or spending money on gold stashed to the emperor. They think their faith and piety is proven on the battlefield, stoically and quietly. Like one of the things is they don't talk when they fight. They just like run around and kill you. So deeds, not words. Each time a unit with this conviction makes a normal move or advances in your movement phase, move or advance, you fire as if stationary, which is incredible. We'll get back to that. And then the second bonus is, every time you shoot with a unit that's Argent Shroud, you can re-roll one hit roll or one wound roll for the unit. So what that means is you can advance with your multi-meltas and shoot it without a penalty for moving and shooting. When we get to Retributors later, we'll say Retributors were nerfed on the datasheet, but then Games Workshop done messed up and made Argent Shroud and made them better than they used to be. So there is no Retributor nerf, people. This is incredible good buff. I'm very excited to I have put this on the table. It's bonkers. It's just so good, especially on Battle Sister squads. Like one multi-melta. This is just so much fun.
So I'll chime in real quick for the deeds, not words, for Argent Shroud. Reading through the new codex, they have updated the lore. Everybody should go check out those sheets. We'll cover them at some other point. One of my favorite sentences that I think chimes in here is that they, due to the propensity for hit and run assaults, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud have some of the deadliest and most experienced shock troops of all the Adeptus Sororitas.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is on brand for the deeds, not words tactic.
Yep. You can even punch with it if you want to. You can even reroll that roll on a punch, not just on a shoot. So that's pretty neat. We'll move on. Faith is our shield. Their stratagem. It's one command point stratagem. So this one's actually really strong. When a unit gets hit with a mortal wound, you can spend a command point for the rest of the phase. They shrug mortals on a 4-up. A 4-up shrug or a 4-up feel no pain is effectively mathematically the same as doubling your wounds. So that Rhino is effectively a 20 wound model when it's getting smited by the Thousand Suns, for example. Very, very powerful effect, especially against Psyker spam units. The Warlord trait is Selfless Heroism. So the Warlord can heroic within 6 inches instead of 3, which is pretty neat. That's a much bigger heroic range. And finally, when we get back to some other parts of the codex, then that could be especially interesting too. And then second, if you're within engaged range of enemy units, it can fight first. So it gets a self-fight first ability, which is kind of neat. And I'll finish up the relic and we'll talk about some. The relic is Quicksilver Veil. This thing adds 3 inches to your move characteristic, and if you try to hit it in combat, it's -1 to hit. So Speedy Sisters, deeds, not words. What do we all think about all this stuff?
I think the Warlord trait, I actually like the Warlord trait from the movement, and I think as we get to some of the blessings later on, I think you could see the relic be combined with some of the blessings to go ahead and set up those the plays for the miraculous abilities or for the generic buffs, because a lot of those are positional dependent. The -1 from the hit roll it's nice. It's definitely a bonus, but I think adding 3 inches onto a character that has a lot of aura-based abilities, I think that's great. I think the 4-up shrug is great too, and honestly, I think when I was talking about how the shooting is up across the board, this was one of the orders that was 100% on my mind for that reason. It's really good. It's really hard for me to overstate how good this is.
So if you look at the math for this, a single multi-melta on the move, like say 5 battle sisters with a multi-melta, 75 points. If you move that multi-melta and fire it as Argent Shroud, it is approximately 100% more effective than not Argent Shroud, because you hit a little better and you have those two opportunities for a reroll. So literally it is twice as good for a single multi-melta, which is pretty bonkers.
Yeah, I think that you're gonna see a lot of people drawn to this one at least to start things off because they want to use the retributors the same way that they were using them. There are some other interesting ways to get relatively effective, multi-month as retributors. I personally am still in favor of having your Order Martyr Lady Girl commit suicide. That's just any opportunity to kill myself for the Emperor, I am immediately drawn to. But the adding the rerolls is really nice, especially with core changes, because there are some units that just don't get access to rerolls, like all of our vehicles, and getting a reroll makes a big difference there.
I think Argent Shroud's hot. That's my take. Here's my gripe. I really wanted a Flying Canoness out of this codex, and if they had stuck that in the Quicksilver Bell for the 3 inches of movement and fly, I would be tearing the decals off my models tonight.
She just runs hard instead.
Yeah, she runs hard. The fly keyword is a dream. Obviously, everybody understands why. I think the Argent Shroud, in my opinion, is the second order I am most excited about, but I think it is the number one most improved, just at the first walkthrough of the codex overall.
I'm not willing to go read what Argent Shroud was before, so I agree.
It was great.
Yeah.
You could advance.
That you don't know.
You could advance and act as you had not advanced, but you still counted as moving. It's what it was before.
Yeah, and no reroll.
Yeah, I was going to say the fact that you didn't know means that it wasn't relevant in 8th edition. So I think that's fair.
I did try that once. I tried a whole Argent Shroud list for the 8th edition book, and I went into Ultramarines, and I was tabled like turn 3 because they didn't shoot anything. Nothing died, and then everything died in the counterpunch. It was not pleasant.
There was a late 8th edition or early 9th edition. There was an emulator Argent Shroud rush list that was floating around. It was cute, but it never really took off.
Yeah.
So I will go ahead and lead us into the last of the orders majoris. It's the Order of the Sacred Rose. So this would be the opposite side of the coin to the Martyred Lady Miracle Dice centric order conviction. Their order conviction is every time a combat attrition test is taken for a unit with this conviction, it's automatically passed. Cool, I guess. And then every time you use a Miracle Dice when a model or unit with this conviction performs an act of faith, you roll a dice, single d6 on the 4, you gain 1 Miracle Dice. And Rob, I'm about to spit some math phraseology here, and it's probably wrong. So I'm really letting you just kind of jump in here. But I believe this the term that I'm looking for is a recursive sequence. You can actually generate just as much Miracle Dice as you use. You kind of alluded to this earlier with the Feel No Pain, where you effectively double your health. That's because on the Feel No Pain, you can re-roll the Feel No Pain again for wounds you've already saved. Same here, you can generate a Miracle Dice with this order conviction, and then when you spend that Miracle Dice you generated, you can roll on it again. Yep. And you can and it functionally, assuming you have a ton of Miracle Dice and you're rolling all the time, on average, you are going to generate as much Miracle Dice as you spend. I believe the term for that is recursive sequence. It might not be, but does that sound right to you, Rob? Or Mitch? Sorry.
No, don't ask Mitch. Mitch does not exist for this question. I've been wrong my whole life. My answer is yes. Even if we're both wrong, Tim, we're wrong together.
No, the math is easy to show, right? The math is easy to show. You start with 8 Miracle Dice.
It approaches 2. It approaches 2 on an infinite series.
Yeah,
gotcha,
you start with 8 Miracle Dice. You get 4 more, and then from those 4 you get 2 more, and from those 2 you get 1 more, and that adds up to like 7 more, and then it goes on forever. But it is mathematically doubling. So all those complaints about not having Miracle Dice, you would also just take Sacred Rose and then have Miracle Dice. It's now a thing.
You can take Sacred Rose and get the Miracle Dice, because as we'll discuss later, the Mortifier poops out Miracle Dice now as it eats the Zealots of Xenos and Heretics.
Oh my God, I don't know if I can wait that long to talk about the Morts. Moving on to the stratagem. Emperor's Judgment. It's a shooting phase stratagem. When you select a Sacred Rose unit to shoot, till the end of the phase, each time an attack roll is made, unmodified hit roll 6 scores 1 additional hit. Not 1 additional attack, 1 additional hit, automatic, exploding 6s. Could be cool on Castigator, maybe. There's not really many ways to buff the Castigator. This is one of them. Unfortunately, it does not work with Mortifiers. If you could be fun on multi-meltas, maybe get an extra hit or two in there. I believe it's a little bit better than reroll ones mathematically. So there you go. If you stack reroll ones and this on a full retribute unit full multi-meltas, you could squeeze an extra hit or two out. So this is pretty good. Go ahead, John.
I want to talk about the math on that one, where it's basically it's a 150% increase over the reroll ones, just on that. But of course, the nice part is that it stacks with reroll ones because it's a different kind of improvement. And the other thing that I really feel obligated to point out is that the most accurate retributors in the game are Sacred Rose retributors next to Morven Vol. They are actually more accurate than Argent Shroud ones because as everyone who has ever rolled their Repentia with Passion active knows, hitting on 4s is secretly 100% reroll, 100% hit rate if you reroll all their 1s, 2s, and 3s. And it's the exact same math with retributors. If you're just hitting on 4s because your opponent has negatives or because you moved like a scrub, and you just pop that CP after Morven Vol taps you on the shoulder, you have an expected value. I don't want to say average because that's not really how math works. You have an expected value of 100% hits.
Yep. So it's just if you're in your home and you're trying to like figure out the math on a unit, basically exploding 6s. If you're hitting on 3s, 25% of your hits are an extra hit. If you're hitting on 4s or better, then 33% of your hits are an extra hit. That's how I always did it when I was calculating retention math. The Warlord trait is Light of the Divine. Once per turn, when the Warlord only performs an act of faith, it's considered to be a 6. Pretty good, not going to complain there. I think just due to the fact that it's a character, you're kind of limited in scope and impact that this can make. But it's still pretty good. And then the Warlord also has the following ability. While a friendly Sacred Rose core unit is within 6 inches of the Warlord, the core unit can fall back and is still eligible to shoot. This Warlord trait is really, really, really good. This is a really, really good Warlord trait. And then we're already kind of seeing some synergy. We're talking about Morven rerolls, exploding 6s, fall back and shoot. Everyone's talking about Argent Shroud, but I think there might actually be a Sacred Rose shooting list, or at least a shooting detachment that we might see. And I apologize if you can hear some rumbling in the background. My son is definitely awake now. He's playing with his blocks. The relic is the Light of Saint Agnatia. I apologize if I butchered that. Basically, it is a special brazier. It replaces the brazier, so you have to buy a brazier, then this replaces it. Each time an attack is made with the weapon, the attack automatically hits the target like a flamer on unmodified wound roll of 4 or 2 up if it's a demon model. It suffers 1 mortal wound attack sequence ends. So it's cute, little mortal wound flamer. I'm sure John could probably tell us there's probably some deep tech or hidden jank there, and the fact that oh no, it does count as a weapon. In the 8th edition book, it didn't count. Braziers didn't. Is it brazier or brazier? I know it's brazier, right?
It's
Brazier,
yeah. Brazier is something completely different. But it was a war gear, and that actually kind of let you exploit like certain loopholes where you didn't have to see the target. It wasn't protected by lookouts or stuff like that, or you could shoot it in addition to other weapons. So unfortunately, it does count as a weapon here. So I think GW kind of got wise to that and kind of did that. But yeah, Sacred Rose overall, I like him a lot. Half the chapter tech is really good. Jury's out in the other half. The stratagem is great. The Warlord trait is really good. And yeah, I do have to apologize. I don't know much about the Sacred Roses lore specifically. They're just not one of the orders that I know a lot about. So you guys have to jump in how well these guys play.
I think the whole thing with the Sacred Rose is that they're renowned for their calm and implacable resolve in battle. That's what the italic says.
Nice.
That's the kind of quality content we've come to expect from Florida Man 40k right there.
There you go.
So they are.
You don't notice it because they have the lo-fi beats going under everything.
They are. They're kind of the. I'm going to call them the good girls of the order. So they are known for perfect harmony, tactical harmony, adapting fluidly. They are the strongest tacticians, as well as they calmly reveal enemy weaknesses, then take advantage of them. So these, I feel like these abilities probably match the fluff as much as probably expected. I will, however, say, just hyping, I am running Sacred Rose right now, is the list that I've been playing over and over. And oh my gosh, oops, all Miracle Dice. It is a ton of fun to just be able to have them generate and then auto-generate more. That 1 CP stratagem, what are you guys thought about that on Blessed Bolt Storm Bolters with rerolls? Is that the right place, or is it just not necessary?
I mean, I'm always a sucker for Meltas because I feel like with the Storm Bolters, so far at least, the Storm Bolters themselves haven't actually been relevant. It's been like, all right, let me get my 6 mortals real quick, and I don't care. That's kind of just been what I've been doing. I think that I like Sacred Rose, and I like those with more of an Vol, just because start getting more command phase buffs, getting units on the table, and rerolls and exploding 6s, just peanut butter and jelly right there. So I like Sacred Rose a lot. I haven't actually put this one on the table yet, but I'm hoping my next game with Sisters will include some Sacred Rose. I think that they've got that nice spot where all of their stuff is pretty useful. Where most of the orders, it's like, okay, the trade is good, the strat is good, and that relic, I already forgot it literally as I'm reading it. You know what? The Sacred Rose relic, it's basically just a brazier that's not a one use only. But hey, if your canonist gets up in the middle and just starts throwing D3 mortal wounds on people like that is not the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, for sure. Hey Siri, remind me to talk more about Sacred Rose when we talk about our faction-specific secondaries. Oops, all Miracle Dice.
Oops, all Miracle Dice indeed.
All right.
Patreon
I gotta
question. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think maybe actually there's more competition than I thought for most bland, I don't know what their thing is, order. I feel like Sacred Rose actually put up a real fight against Evan Chalice. I'm not really sure what their deal is. Like, they're smart and calm. Maybe they're not the crazy ones wearing basketball shorts and chainsaws, but I feel like that's not much of a thing. I don't know.
On the other hand, that's really not what I was expecting. Like, I honestly expected the lore for all 6 orders to be a competition to see like which one was the most crazy. It's like kind of like the 17 different flavors of M&Ms. At this point, it's just like it's an M&M, it's a peanut M&M, or it's one of those other ones. I was not expecting them to go, we are the most vanilla.
There is in the 8th edition codex, I don't know if it's in the 9th edition, I'll have to go read, Bloody Rose just took my heart when I was reading their fluff, because there's this one sentence that says that they can become so passionate and get visited by the power of the Emperor that literally blood and light will start leaking out of their eyes. And this isn't just like the canonists or like Celestine rolling around, this is any one of them.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what the strat is. The strat is 1 CP, your girls start crying blood. It's like, oh, okay.
I'm down.
Yeah, and then this is the warlord trait. Everyone around you refuses to panic, and they just walk evenly towards the exit.
So the one of the interesting Patreon questions was just kind of a gut check. What is the best order now, and why is it Argent Shroud? Well, if it's the best Argent Shroud's reason, it's because of multi-melta your face. Oops, all multi-melta. Maybe we should just rename the orders.
Oops, all Miracle Dice. Oops, all multi-meltas.
That's right.
Oops, all punching.
Oops, my eyes are bleeding.
No, that's not an oops. That's very on purpose, John. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know what the best order is. Like, I'm gonna have to say we're gonna be out to lunch for quite some time on this. I don't see it being easy.
I think it was honestly, you don't have to out yourself, whoever said that, but I think if you just line up 4 or 5 shows and then people just do their hot takes, and then you just parrot back what people on podcasts and YouTube and everything like that say as hot takes, and you don't really dive into it or throw it on the table and come to your own conclusions, or really stop and think about how all these things interact with each other, then yeah, Argent Shroud is going to sound like the best, because it is the most obvious raw power for shooting, and everyone likes shooting. Who doesn't like shooting? Bloody Rose getting quote nerfed, they got off super easy, and they're still very good. And not only that, but their 2 halves of their chapter tactic feed into each other. AP and the extra attacks, they feed into each other. Not a lot of other order fictions do that. So when you take 2 parts of the attack sequence and feed them into each other, and then you add other bonuses that also feed into the attack sequence, you very quickly get this multiplicative effect. So still very strong. And I think, and this was actually a surprise for me reading through this here with you guys. I didn't come into this episode of this recording knowing this, but talking with John, hearing him talk about it, thinking about the different combinations that are not immediately apparent on the page, say, hey, play this like this. We've discovered that maybe Sacred Rose might actually be the shooting faction. It really might. So already challenges are being, or preconceptions are being challenged. And I think that's the most important thing, if I could impart anything to listeners, is throw it on the table and test stuff out and search for the combinations. It's really the only way to be sure. Don't just listen to a talking head online, including us.
Yeah, 100%. I think all orders have play.
Still listen to us. I disagree with Tim. You should listen to the talking heads.
Says the guy who is a paid talking head on Art of War. It's self-interest.
Hey.
Self-interest.
I'm not
my day
paid.
job.
I'm not paid. Question everything.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's. Oh god.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to move us on to the Order Minoris. So, go do your thing.
No, go for it.
All right, Order Minoris. I'm probably not going to read every single one of them because at least 6 of them are literally half of the Order Majoris.
Yep.
To give an example, one of them is Shield of Aversion. Treat AP -1 as AP dash, and that's like half of Valorous Heart right there. So that's cool. But there are actually a lot of good ones in here. There's the default one that's like the successor chapter where it's like you just pick an Order Majoris and it's like why aren't you just playing it that way? But you know what, fluff. But in all actuality, there are a couple of really good ones in the Order Minoris. One of them that I really liked is you get just a free reroll. It's like the Argent Shroud free reroll, but it's the exact same thing. It just doesn't come with the advance and shoot. But then you can maybe pair it up with like a melee focused one, such as Devout Fanaticism. Every time you charge or charge, you add 1 to your hit roll. Another one that I think is going to be relatively popular is the Melta one, aka it's a Raging Fervor, where your Meltas always count as in half range if it's a pistol or an assault weapon, and then if it's a heavy weapon, then the half range is 18 inches instead of 12, essentially. So that's going to make the multi-meltas pretty good. All of these orders, these sub-orders, have like a you cannot pair X with Y underneath. Or not all of them, but a lot of them do. So if you think something is too cool, double check the last line to make sure that it doesn't stack. Like you cannot stack the Raging Fervor with Rites of Fire, which is adding 4 inches to your flame weapons. I don't know why the flame weapon one doesn't stack with the melted weapon one, since they don't overlap in the slightest. But that's what it says. One of the ones that I think is actually a little underrated in the conversations I've heard is Righteous Suffering, which is basically half of Transhuman, where an unmodified 1 or 2 always fails to wound you. And that doesn't sound amazing, but so many things wound sisters on 2s that I get sick of.
Yeah.
Just taking it to 3s is just a little bit better. Like you could combo that with the Ignoring AP one, and that honestly I think is just more durable than Valorous Heart. If you're just trying to be durable, I think that's just better. But as Tim mentioned, there's more to wound, things to think about as well. But a lot of interesting Order Minoris. My gut instinct here is that I'm not going to take any of these. They're cool.
I'm going to take what John said. I'm going to soften it up just a little bit.
All right, fine. Tough.
For all of our homies out here who have been dying to make their own order and to go play and understand and live your fluff, you can do that now. So I think GW checked the box in a very nice way. I agree with John for top tier competitive play. This offers nothing that you can't get better from an actual Order Majoris.
Yeah, but it is. I guess I'll soften my own blow here. If you want to do a single faction, this is a nice way to balance the buffs you're giving out. Kind of how I mentioned, Ebon Chalice tries to do that as well. But like Bloody Rose doesn't buff your multi-meltas, right? If you're trying to do a little bit of melee, a little bit of shooting buff in one detachment, let's say you're really, you're tight on command points, this is an interesting way to do it. So it's not, I don't want to make it sound completely useless. And yes, custom orders are fine.
This is for everybody listening. This is not the equivalent of the Necron Codex, where you could get your 6-inch pregame move, and then everybody had OBSEC. Oops, all OBSEC Dynasty. So I think that most players will be looking towards the orders.
Yeah, the major ones. I think that's a pretty fair statement.
Yeah, there's also a couple in here which are like anti-psyker, and it's just hard to feel like that's the right place to put an anti-psyker rule. Like the convict you have to pick ahead of time. It's like very meta-tailoring. Those are a little disappointing too.
The Burning of Prospero will be very upset when they meet us again.
Yeah, I like the one where the wound rolls of 1 and 2 fail, and I like the Melta one, and I think maybe you could do like a detachment of those two or something like that. But it feels like they're kind of tempering the fact that you can pick and choose certain or halves of all the convictions with the fact that they're slightly weaker versions of the convictions. But the Melta one, the Melta being full range one, that one is really cool. You can't find that elsewhere. And then the half a transhuman one is really cool as well. It does come up. I'm so used to sisters being wounded on 2 that this would actually come up a lot. So I can see if I was going to make a generic one, I would probably do those 2 together. But yeah, I think generally, if you're trying to make, barring some weird list that shows up like 6 months from now, I think you'd probably skip these. But they're cool. I'm glad they're here.
Yeah.
I feel like this is podcast your danger zone. We're all going to say something, and then in 6 months, someone's going to win a major, and we're all going to look stupid. There's some combination we haven't seen.
That's why I'm leaving myself one out and just saying that the list is going to show up like 6 months from now. Always leave yourself out.
Yeah, I will say I was disappointed when I was reading the Order Minoris and I noticed like, oh, a lot of these are just half of the main ones. I was disappointed that we got the combat attrition half of Sacred Rose.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to be able to like take multi-melt as an extra miracle dice? And it's like, nope, +1 to combat attrition. I'm like, dang it.
I was hoping
GW no.
I was hoping for +1 attack and OBSEC in here somewhere. I was going to make a list that was just purely +1 attack and OBSEC across the board.
Yes, who doesn't love?
So for those keeping track, we're now John Lennon 1, Games Workshop 1. Scoreboard.
No. Yeah, they got me.
All right, shall we move on to blessings?
Absolutely. So I think we're going to have to round robin through these because there's so much new and deep about blessings. So blessings are a brand new part of the 9th edition codex. If your army's Battleforge includes any Adeptus Sororitas detachments, then when you are mustering your army, you can upgrade any Canonist or Palatine model in your army by giving them one of the blessings. So this is similar to the Necron Codex, where your weird boys, what are they, the Chronomancer, etc., can take additional free almost relic upgrades. So it's same thing for Canonists. I'm going to start by saying these are incredibly flavorful. Like, GW, home run. You gave us something that I want to spend points on, that is a unique mechanic that just absolutely blows the back out of some of the situations that you may run into. But these are also pretty wrinkle-brained. None of these are 100% always going to work the way you want them to. So I'll read through it real quick. So these are upgrades that you can purchase for points. Named characters cannot be given Blessings of the Faithful before you run out with Vol and set the world on fire. Whenever you give it to them, every Blessing of the Faithful has 2 associated abilities. The first is an ability that the model with the blessing gains, and it's always on. The second is a miraculous ability. What makes it miraculous is that first you, in your command phase, you have to discard 1 miracle dice, and then the ability is activated throughout your turn into the next command phase, your next command phase. If you discard a 1, then your miracle has a range of 1 inch. If you discard a 2 through 5, the miracle has a range of 3 inches. And if you discard a 6, it's a miracle range of 6. This is awesome and kind of a drawback at the same time because it's a great way to use a 1 inch. If it turns out that you can discard a 1 if you know what you need is going to be within 1 inch, or you can discard a 6. So it's very flexible. All right, so what are the blessings? I can see everybody already saying get to the point. I'll go through the first one, then let's round robin through a couple of them. So Word of the Emperor. So at the start of the fight phase, you can select 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of the model. That unit is not eligible to fight this phase until after all eligible units from the army have done so. So for everybody out there, the most recent fact kind of clarified the way that I don't want to call it initiative because I understand old guard Warhammer people have some kind of reaction to that word. But there is basically you can fight first, you fight with everybody else, then you fight last. This really helps with the... it gives you a great trump card because you can select somebody and just basically say you don't get to go now. The miraculous ability. So in your command phase, you discard a miracle dice. While an enemy unit is within miracle range of the model, each time a model in a friendly order core or order character unit makes a melee attack, and vulnerable saving throws cannot be made against this attack. Holy goodness gracious. Hello, Daisy. If you can Wrinkle Brain your Zephyrum or Repentia or insert any blend unit into range of something with an invulnerable save that you absolutely want to run it today, this is your chance. I hate to say this because you all know that I am an ardent follower of the Emperor, but if your best friend plays Custodes and has a Telemon, this is absolutely the best way to make a Telemon weep blood and then fall down dead.
So, minor story time here. I'm joining a new game group in Oxford. Things starting to open up for COVID, so we can actually play in person. It's my second game in the club. I'm playing a very, very nice guy, and he's bringing his Death Guard, and I had this in my list. And he says to me, I'm curious if Mortarion will survive this turnaround if you can kill him. And I say, I'm not. And so we go in, he fights last, and then I announce, so now I'm going to use the miraculous ability and turn off his invulnerable save. And my opponent, again, lovely human being, says, Mortarion has a rule that turns off auras near him. And I say, I'm so sorry, friend. Miraculous abilities are not aura abilities. And his poor face just went, oh. And then he got killed by Zephyrum, is what happened.
I didn't catch that. Is it not an aura because specifically it doesn't call it out?
It's literally written. They are not affected by abilities that affect our abilities and vice versa. It's right there in the rule.
It's so you can't combine it with Book of St. Lucius to get like a 9-inch aura. Specifically the reason why they put it in. I guarantee it.
But also now it doesn't get canceled.
Correct.
Wow. And with the Death Guard cancel culture, which is really the travesty that we need to talk through, that is some pretty awesome knowledge. Thanks for the knowledge bomb, Mitch.
Yeah. So sorry, Death Guard player. He still beat me because I'm learning the new book. But that moment, I beat him in my heart.
Okay. I'll take the next one, which is Rapturous Blows. Add 1 to the strength and damage characteristics of all melee weapons this model is equipped with, excluding relics. So if you thought you were going to take this with Beneficence and bump it back up to damage 2, I'm sorry, that is not possible. And the miraculous ability once per game. While friendly order core or order character unit is within miracle range of this model, each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack on an unmodified wound roll 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to the normal damage. I like this combined with, and you're going to hear this a lot, I like this combined with Morven because you can just reroll everything but the 6s to wound and really, really, really fish for those mortals. Not that Zephyrum really need the help, but they are kind of... Bloody Rose Zephyrum are kind of where I was thinking of combining this, just because you can get an atrocious amount of attacks, 51 I believe from a 10-girl squad, and you can really lay on the hurt. Or you can go MSU, because this doesn't apply to one, it applies to all units in range. If you do Fight Last with Draxus or Word of the Emperor, and the Word of the Emperor Fight Last is not once per game, so you go Fight Last, and MSU comes on, you can really lay the hurt with a ton of mortals. Mortal output is up across the board in this book, and this is just an example of that.
So another caveat that I forgot specifically to mention, you can only have one miracle go off per turn. So if you were suddenly sitting here thinking about Rapturous Blows plus Word of the Emperor, unfortunately you'll have to do that over 2 rounds instead of 1.
Yeah, one thing which Rob, you mentioned being able to apply these kind of like the cryptic buffs is that because these can be applied to Canonists and Palatines both, it means now we have 3 vectors to stack because we have Warlord traits, we have relics, and we have Blessed of the Faithful. You can build a mean Canonist with a Blessed Blade using the Rapturous Blows ability. Getting that sucker up to strength 6, damage 3, that is going to do some damage.
I'm also going to call out that Tim had to pronounce it for me. I've been reading it as Rupturous Blows because I think that's also accurate. But thank you for reading, Tim. I appreciate that.
I love it. Rapturous Blows.
Rupturous. Did Mortarion rupture?
He did.
Right.
That's factual.
Mitch,
All
you
right,
want to
we'll
handle
do-
Divine Deliverance?
Let's do Divine Deliverance. So the ongoing ability is at the start of your opponent's command phase, pick an enemy unit within 6 inches of the model, and pick an R they have. If you can beat their leadership on 3d6, if you can tie or beat their leadership on 3d6, that single R ability is turned off. And secondarily, the Miraculous ability. So when a order, core, or character model within miracle range is near this model, then basically, if they kill something, the enemy unit that they killed suffers -1 leadership for every model that they killed. And you cannot reduce by more than 3. So if you shoot a guard squad, kill 3 or more models, they'll take -3 to their morale for the rest of the turn. So I think so far the first two have felt like real hits. This one feels like a bit of a miss, maybe. Turning off a single aura within short range of an enemy character. If you're within close range of an enemy character, 6 inches, and you're a character, you're probably dead, unless that character is real weak. So that's a bit of a challenge for me. And you have to beat their leadership, so you're kind of throwing away your character to literally roll some dice and hope something happens. And, leadership is, as in past editions, something Games Workshop have not figured out how to make super relevant to the game. I don't think this anywhere near gets enough, putting that over the edge to useful. Cheap, though. This is only 15 points, but still, yeah.
I think the opportunity cost is the bigger deal here, not the points cost.
100%.
Yep.
Because you can only put them on canvases and palatines. You have very few slots available for that.
Yep. I'll go ahead and take that next one, I think.
The Emperor's
Grace. This one I like. So this one is at the start of your command phase. This model is healed and regains D3 lost wounds. And then they can only be healed once per turn, so don't get a hospi nearby as well. But still, just healing D3 wounds is really cool, the one game in your life that it comes up. But then the really nice part, actually it's good because I think where this is actually useful is if a character dies and you use the 2 CP to stand her up and then she's very wounded because you only had a couple Miracle Lights to discard, then you heal the D3. My characters are very rarely just coincidentally wounded, but it'll be nice. The big part is the Miraculous ability. This is the fun part. While a friendly order core or character unit is within miracle range of this model, each time an attack is made against this unit, your opponent cannot reroll the hit roll, cannot reroll the wound roll, and cannot reroll the damage roll. That is melee and shooting. No rerolls to hit, no rerolls to wound. You're all 1 wound anyway, so whatever. But no rerolling damage either.
It's for the whole turn. It's crazy.
It's so good.
And it's everything. This is the Emperor's Auspice, which is 2 CP for Custodes. Lets you have it for just 1 unit, just for 1 phase. This is a basement bargain. This is incredible.
I think
this one's in every list.
Yeah, if you are trying to, and even if this wasn't in every list for some reason, which I think this one's really good, if you're going to an event and you're trying to win it and you are planning to go through AdMech, and if it's a decent sized event, GT or larger, and you're trying to win it, you are going through AdMech. It's just going to happen. You need this to be in your list.
Or AdMech's going through you.
Yeah, exactly. If you
or not going through you.
If you haven't played into new AdMech yet, this is your best source of defense. I'm telling you what, it is not the Battle Sister Transhuman. It's this.
It's 1 round. The whole round. For everything within up to 6 inches of your character. Bonkers.
It's also fun.
That's exactly what I want.
This is the second cheapest of the 6 blessings as well. It's only 20 points. 20 points.
For now. Yeah.
Before they make it 80.
For now.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Right.
Yep, this one's just amazing. A+.
All right. Tim, do you want to do Righteous Judgment?
Sure. Each time you select a target for this model's ranged weapons, you can ignore the Lookout Sir rule. Each time this model makes a ranged attack, unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. The Miraculous ability is while a friendly order core or order character model is within miracle range. Each time that model makes a ranged attack, the target does not receive the benefits of cover against that attack. I think if you were leaning into some sort of flamer or bolter, and I want to say flamer build, I think this may be kind of where you'd use it. I'm not super impressed with the static ability, but I think that maybe and even honestly, because Retributors now ignore cover, I'm really trying to struggle where you use this. Maybe if you go with like a bolter heavy build, where you're taking flamers on non-Retributors, and this would be a situation where maybe you try to combo with Sacred Rose, Exploding Sixes, the Sacred Right for 6s or extra AP. You could maybe do something, but man, it feels like you are really trying to string together a bunch of very swingy math and swingy abilities to try to make some sort of synergy happen. I'm sure I'll be proven wrong, but that's kind of where I see you using this. I'm just, again, it's the opportunity cost. With everything else that we're seeing here, I'm just not 100% certain, based on reading this, that this one gets there.
The problem is that Arcanists don't have guns that can shoot people. The only thing is like Emperor's Wrath?
Or that melted gun from our Martyred Lady would be hilarious. Yeah, the Martyr's Fury, hilarious.
D6 plus 3.
But even then, like let's be honest, that you're just memeing people at that point. So I think this
don't
one
judge
feels
our life choices.
This one feels like a safe skip. They can't all be winners, and that's good because you can only take so many of them. So I think this one is a safe skip.
Well, I will be the first to say that I think that 25 points for Righteous Judgment, the math on that just does not compute to my head, especially when ignore all rerolls for the whole turn is 20. So there's something that happened at GW playtesting. Yeah, there's something that happened at playtesting, and there is something that none of us have figured out yet that later we're going to be like, oh god, this is it. This is the deep tech.
Yeah. John's saving that for the next GTU. He's not going to tell us what it is yet. Yeah.
It's the Ultra Lady list. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
All right. Blinding Radiance. So each time the static ability, each time a ranged attack is made against this model, subtract 1 from that attack's wound roll. So pretty good, situationally good. But if you're out there tanking a lot of wound rolls, you're probably dead anyway. Miraculous ability. While a friendly order character unit is within Miracle Dice range, each time a ranged attack is made against that unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So, my friends, you can turn your Canonist or Palatine into a Vexilla. That is, for one golden turn, at the cost of a Miracle Dice, everything within 6 inches can get a -1 to be hit.
Now, like Rob said, you cannot use 2 of these in the same turn, but you sure as heck can turn off rerolls 1 turn and then -1 to hit the next one.
Yeah, I think the -1 to hit and then kind of a transhuman would have to go hand in hand because they're still going to hit you because that other person probably has full rerolls on everything.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, only for 4 battle rounds they do.
That's right. That's right. All right, so what do we all think about blessings overall?
Love them.
I like them.
Super cool mechanic. Cool mechanic.
I like them a lot. They're a nice little piece of flavor, and situationally, some lists you can build around. But also, they made them in such a way where you can build lists that don't take these, and it doesn't feel like you're purposely like leaving money or power on the table, which I like. I think that's a hard balance to strike, and I think for the most part they were successful. So I like them a lot.
I love that they're once per game Miracle Dice mechanics because, as you all know, one of my favorite things is kind of that whole creating the narrative as you're playing. And the idea of some of these things that require a Canonist or a Palatine to just like run next to the enemy and then just pop a Miracle Dice. And it's like, so I just turned off all your BS. Watch this. Or for them to just stand out in the middle of Planet Bowling Ball and say, go ahead, shoot us with everything. You don't get rerolls and I don't care. That is just such an overwhelmingly fun, fluffy, lore-based idea with the Emperor's Blessing. I think it's great.
I'm reading one of the Danny Ware books right now, and it's all the Battle Sisters kind of in an armored column going to attack a heretic's base, and the Canonist is with them. And there's a few times where their resolve is about to break, and maybe their line's about to break, and then the Canonist just like starts singing and praying, and all this is like, holy crap! And then they're awesome and super powerful. I feel like this is that in rule form, and so I really like that. Other thing I'd add is I enjoy the fact that how many people who I've chatted with online who say unequivocally that this one is the best one. but there's not a lot of agreement over which that one is. So there's a lot of very fierce opinions in just different directions, and I think that's a sign of good design, probably.
I think to Tim's point, we can point out the slowest horse in the race, but I'm not sure which one's the best horse.
I will say that I think in every situation where you would take Blinding Radiance, I think you probably would want Emperor's Grace instead, unless it's a faction that's still using the 8th edition book. Yeah, and doesn't have a lot of rerolls or something like that. But I think 90% of the time, Emperor's Grace specifically beats out Blinding Radiance, unless it's just an army that just goes on volume and doesn't have rerolls.
Agreed.
Orcs.
Orcs and Knights jumped to my mind.
Yeah, that's true. Knights don't reroll anything anyway. Scrubs.
That's going to be the surprise. Is that Custodes too? They just get full rerolls all the time.
Real important for those 2s to hit. Yeah,
that's right.
All right, shall we move on to the hymns?
Yes,
battle?
we should.
Am I required to sing this entire section? Because I will.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Charge to the Patreon.
War hymn.
Okay, we're done here.
All right, I've been booted. All right, so the way these work, there are a number of priests in your army. Now, once upon a time, those were just lowly missionaries and preachers lacking the Adeptus Sororitas keyword and the appropriate faith that goes along with that. Now we've added the new Dogmata and the Dialogus, who are now also priests. First off, this is cool, because like Dogmatas and Dialogi should be yelling and making everyone excited, and I'm glad they have rules to reflect that. So the way this works is everybody starts with War Hymn, and then almost all of them, except for the preacher, can take an additional one. So Ministorum Priest, so the missionary, can take just from the first 3. Sororitas Priest, because they're better, can take any of the 6 available in addition to War Hymn. The way these work are just like Chaplain Shouts, where at the command phase, you roll a d6. On a 3, the hymn is inspiring, and you get the benefit. If you roll a 1 or a 2, it doesn't. So that's how that works. I will start with War Hymn. If this hymn is inspiring, pick an Adeptus Ministorum core character or Engine of Redemption unit, note Engine of Redemption unit here, and give them +1 attack. So this is replacing the old priest buff with +1 attack with 2 differences. It's going to work on penitent engines. And also, because it's a command phase point at you buff, it means you can give +1 a hit and then they can go off on adventures and not maintain a 6-inch distance to the priest afterwards. Friggin' cool. Thoughts?
I like them. I think it's a really cool thing, and I think it's very thematic. It always just felt weird that chaplains had litanies and we didn't. Before we dive too deep, I think there was a missed opportunity here where Inspiring Order, I would have loved to see it, Inspiring Order Warlord trait be +1 to these rolls.
Yeah.
Right now, they just go off on a 3, and there's no rerolls there, there's no miracle dice used, it's just 33% of the time, it's not inspiring. Just not feeling it, just not inspired this round. Wasn't very good. Try again next round. But I like them a lot. I don't think you build around these. Although I do think you certainly want them. You want a priest or 2 in your army. I don't think you go wide or deep on these, but you definitely want a few.
Yeah, I kind of wish Miracle Dice worked on them. That would be nice and fluffy.
I would love to see Miracle Dice being used there.
Yep. Or discard a Miracle Dice to add +1 to the inspired roll would be great.
I think, guys, we just have to get over this. This is what it's like to have to roll for your abilities instead of just choose for your abilities to work.
There's a
so
Patreon
plebeian,
question.
yeah.
There's a Patreon question that we'll address after this, and I think it's a really good time to kind of get on a soapbox a little bit and talk about how we adjust to the new book. But I don't want to bury the lead. Let's go ahead and I don't know, Mitch, why don't you start this off? Let's go ahead and just rattle through these real quick.
Yeah, so we just did War Hymn, which is the first one. That's the +1 attack, which is obviously amazing to be able to do that and then go on adventures and not be tied to your priest anymore. I'll just walk through all of them, and then we can talk about the ones that we like. Refrain or Blazing Piety. So this one, if you pull it off, then pick an enemy unit within 12 inches and visible to the priest. They just take D3 mortal wounds. We got to smite, people. If they have the Chaos keyword, they take 3 mortal wounds instead, because that's just adorable and deserved. Course of Spiritual Fortitude. So this one is, again, you can use it in the command phase. So any any model with any unit within 6 inches, this goes off. If they're being currently affected by psychic abilities, nope, not anymore. And here's the cool thing. They become immune to psychic powers until your next command phase, which means you can bless them, throw them forward, and then they can be smite casters forever. We'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. Some of Righteous Smiting. So this is the personal buff. So +1 to your strength and attack characteristic of the priest who intone the hymn. Improves their AP by 1 as well, excluding relics. And it can fight twice at the end of the fight phase. It just gets a natural fight twice, which is so fun. So fun.
Okay, I'm going to break in here and say the
Please.
Psalm of the Righteous has me doing heavy breathing as I'm reading the Codex. It's probably not reasonable, but the Phlegmata, I think, is a real thing we need to talk through.
As soon as I read this, the first thing I thought was Bloody Rose Dogmata.
Yep. That girl can get 5 attacks on the charge, double fight for 10 attacks. She's hitting it like strength 6, AP 3, flat 2 damage. We found Becky. She's just a different character now. Yeah.
Man, I wish I could put the blessing that gives +1 strength and +1 damage on a Dogmata and just send them off to war.
Wrecking battle tanks. Yeah. All right. It's worth noting the 3 that I just read are the ones that any priest can use, whether they be Ministorum or Sororitas. The following 3 are Sororitas only. So number 4, Litany of Enduring Faith. This one is pick a unit within 6, and they get +1 to their invulnerable save. So it's the first way we've seen in the Codex yet to buff their invulnerable save from the Shield of Faith rule. Number 5, Verse of Holy Piety. So this one is pick a Adeptus Sororitas core or character within 6. They get an extra Sacred Rite, not currently active, just for that one character and just for that battle round. And then the last one, Catechism of Repugnance. This one was previewed on Warhammer Community. So this one is pick a core character within 6. For their bolt weapons, an unmodified 6 to hit automatically wounds. We discussed automatically wound logic previously. We were talking about Bloody Rose, tear them down. And if it targets you within half range, hey, you get a point of armor piercing, which is pretty cool. Especially if you combine that with, say, the Rite that does the same. So, yeah, what is everyone's take on these hymns? Which ones excite you the most?
Blazing Piety, I think, is if you just have a character that can have 2 or something like that, or you're taking a missionary instead of a preacher. I actually kind of like this one as a generic one, just because the targetable smite essentially is never a bad thing. Psalm of Righteous Smiting, if you play Space Marines, this is very similar to Mantra of Strength. It's just instead of +1 damage, you have a fight again. So very good. I like it a lot. Spiritual Fortitude, be situational, but there have been hinted that the Grey Knights and Thousand Sons are going to be after orcs. So very good there. Hey, send a lone pendant engine or something like that. Just have a breakdance in front of your entire army. Catch smites.
Yep.
Enduring Faith. I think this is the old like +1 invul that we're used to. So I think this is very good when you kind of push that unit forward or miss that unit off. 4 up invul Zephyrum, 5 up invul Repentia. It's a real thing. Just note that this does not stack with the Storm Shields of Sacrosanct. So sorry, no 3 up invul Sacrosanct.
Also note this is the only way to boost the invulnerable save of Paragon Warsuits, because the other way to do this in the book is infantry locked. So this is how you get them to a 5. Yep.
Holy Piety or Piety. This one is situational. I think in any situation where you're trying to build a specific unit to take advantage of a second Sacred Rite, I think you would have this plan in your mind when you list build, because you have to choose this at list building. So you have a plan that you're not just doing this blind. You have a plan to at some point use 2 rights. So I think in this situation, there's a certain relic that lets you get a similar effect, and I think you would just take that relic instead, because at least that goes off. This you have to roll for it. So if you're trying to build this plan at list building, there's a 33% chance that it just doesn't happen when you need it to happen. This whole thing that you plan for at list building. So, maybe I could be proven wrong, but I think to me number 5 is Verse of Holy Piety is probably the weakest. 6, Catechism of Repugnance. I think if you're trying to build some sort of like bolter specific build here, like you could potentially start going for synergy with exploding 6s, ignore cover, getting bolters up to AP2, full rerolls. I think it really feels like you're really just bulldozing off the we're no longer wandering off the beaten path at that point. We are just straight up hopping in a bulldozer and just building a new path, and it's like, I don't know if it's worth it at the end of the road, but it is certainly a thing you could do, And
I
think
this.
Yeah, you can go for it if you want to. So I don't know, jury's out on this one. I do want to see someone try it. It probably won't be me, but I want to see someone try it, and I want to hear about it. So
no,
I like them all.
Catechism of Repugnance is life. It's beautiful. You pop that baby off with, and I know that we are collectively maybe hot or cold on blocks of 20 girls, but 20 girls with 2 storm bolters, you stick this on there, you just sit there and you giggle. This is a lot of fun, especially with Sacred Rose, exploding sixes. It's
so there's a little bit, there's a word I've heard is called a nombo, which is the opposite of a combo. And when you have exploding sixes, that additional hit that's generated does not have a numerical value. So any effects that happen on sixes do not apply to that additional hit.
No, that's fine. It's still a hit. It's still just another hit.
I mean, it makes sense. You're looking for sixes anyhow, so
right.
We might as well just lean into it. So yeah, I think there's enough things where you can stack abilities or effects on sixes that I think that maybe you hit a critical mass at some point, especially with the morbid rerolls, and you just reroll everything. So sure, I think if you lean super hard into a Bolter Brick, stuff like that, maybe you can make something happen here.
I'll give you a bit of math on this because longtime fans of Sister Act know that there are several units that I have an irrational, exuberant love for. For example, the classic Celestian. A little more low-key, but I also irrationally love the Heavy Bolter Retributor unit. I just love them. And if you look at the math on Catechism of Repugnance for them, it's actually pretty compelling. So if you fire into a Rhino, or other T6 plus, 3 plus safe or better unit, if you have without Catechism, you'll average 4 damage into it from 18 shots, like using both your cherubs. If you turn on Catechism, that actually goes up to an expected value of 8 damage, which is twice as much, which nearly kills that Rhino, just for those 18 girls, within 18 inches for the extra armor penetration. And if you turn Vol rerolls on, they'll average a little over 14 expected damage, which is actually nearly as much. Yeah, I mean, that'll kill a Rhino. That'll knock half the wounds off a Knight, even through the invulnerable save. I mean, someone's going to be surprised by that, and that's a lot of damage. Now, granted, it's using your Vol. There's opportunity cost, but that's not nothing. So
yeah, that's the thing it comes down to is I just wonder if it's worth the opportunity cost, because you could just do the same thing, which is Argent Shroud Retributors with almost 0 buffs.
Can you?
So that's I think there could be a potential possibility here. But we're talking about stacking 8 different buffs on a 220 point unit to kill a Rhino. And it's just yeah, no, your opponent's gonna be wow, that was cool, and then he just kills you. So it's just it's cute. I'm just not sure if it gets there. But
it's beautiful.
But by all means, try it. Try it, because I want to crowdsource the play testing here. I know there's a lot of Excited Sisters players, so definitely if someone finds some hidden combo, please report back and let us know.
What doesn't work before everybody in their car drives off the road because they're so excited? You cannot put this on Mortifiers, which is the utter breaking of my heart.
Yes.
Because if you think it's fun to put it on Heavy Bolter Retributors, which have 4 guns, well, holy gosh, I've got something that you may enjoy a little bit more.
I would have loved to custom order.
Work.
I would have loved a custom order where it just works on Mortifiers. I didn't even care what it was. I just would have took it.
That's the order Minoris that we need to make. Let's have that in the Crusade episode where we just make up our own fluff. Feel yes, my Mortifiers, my Order Majoris, everything works on them.
Plus 2 to advancing charges and exploding 6s on bolters.
Oh, we need to talk about that in Crusade, because in Crusade you can make anything with the cult keyword into having a order or a Adeptus Sororitas keyword.
John, I'm quitting competitive play. I'll see you over
different.
Crusade.
Yeah. We'll have that talk some other time.
Oh God, I want that. Want it too.
So let me ask you guys a question, because I'm struggling with this in my list. So this is the I'll ask the questions to get the big brains. How many priests do I bring? Because I want to bring 3. And I feel like 3, I'm bringing 3 to guarantee things. I feel like 2 is the minimum for me to list build. And I kind of feel like I'm in the Imagifier trap of 8th edition. And 1 just feels wrong. I feel like it's 0, 2, maybe 3.
Oh man, I had 1 as my answer.
Yeah, I actually have 1 to 2, and it's usually because I'm bringing. I'm looking at the Dogmata, the Dialogist, or the Preacher, and I usually want 1 to 2 because I want one to cast +1 attack or to recite 1 attack, and then if I'm Bloody Rose, I want the Dogmata. I think all the other ones are either situational enough where I could just shave those points and just get more stuff in the list, and or the fact that they are not reliable enough where you don't want to really depend on it. But you do still want, hey, 66% of the time your unit just has extra attacks, and Preachers are cheap, and you can put that that new weapon on it. I can't remember what it's called, but it's so you can use that so you can use the Pious Born model, but it's basically the flavor plus the Eviscerator, and that's 35 points. That's actually not bad. And I'm going to go ahead and tie this into the Patreon question just so we can move along. There was a Patreon question. The priest keyword is the new hotness, but it seems to me you're building an army based more on chance rather than keeping with the nun's foundation of taking that out of the picture. John, Tim, Rob, Mitch, what do you guys think? This is nice to have, but ultimately, it's a trap. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll lead here because I do want to soapbox on this pretty hard, and then I'm going to kick it off because we are running a little bit short on time. I think if Priest were in the 8th edition book, I would absolutely agree with you. But we have been dragged kicking and screaming into this new book. So the thing is there is an illusion of choice here. You don't have the option to reject Priest and embrace your own reality. It's just not there. Mitch, that's a callback to, or Mitch Ross, a callback to a conversation we had a while ago. This is what I'm talking about, where we have to embrace the paradigm shift and the paradigm change of the new book. GW wants us to go more into playing the same game that everyone else is playing. And that's fine because they brought down the Miracle Dice generation a little bit. But hey, we can still do the automatic charges if you manage to string 2 together. I was expecting that to go away. So that's great. It does feel more impactful, but it's also less of a feels bad for your opponent. But the power is still there. It's just going to feel more impactful. They have made up for that by making a rebalancing of the orders. Bloody Rose, Armored Lady, got off super light, slap on the wrist. They brought everything else up. For the most part, I think all the relics and warlord traits, slap on the wrist, everything else brought up. Shooting is up across the board. We got Repentia got buffed. Zephyrim, in my opinion, got buffed. Hey, you lost +1 to wound, but you know what? We got so many more tools. We have Sacrosancts. I can talk for an entire day on Sacrosancts. We got so many more units. We got more involved. This was a net game. So the thing is you can choose not to embrace priests, but it's not a if and or if or of it's priest and building on chance versus building on miracle dice, because the 4 to 6 miracle dice a turn or a round, that's gone. It's not coming back. So there is no opting out of miracle dice because you chose to take priests. However, I do think that the priests they're flavorful and they're nice, but if you don't like them, just take a 30 to 35 point preacher for potentially +1 attack, and then build some sort of other synergy or archetype into your list. You don't have to run a bunch of priests, but don't think that it's an option of this or miracle dice, because the old miracle dice in the 8th edition book, they're gone, and you just have to adapt.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like we should mention that since we're talking about these hymns and having to roll for them, there is a stratagem to auto pass a hymn.
Yep. And
we'll talk about stratagems later, of course, but I feel obligated to just point that out. If you really are playing against Grey Knights, you can just kind of set aside 5 CP for Spiritual Fortitude and just double drop the middle finger on your opponent.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I called it the Calexis strat.
I think a lot of these are very good to have. Like, if you don't get +1 attack, okay. The math isn't as in your favor, but it's not going to break the game. Catechism Repugnant, same thing. Extra bolter damage, okay. Extra invuln, okay. Maybe you make a few less saves, but the game's not going to make or break on them. I think John's actually nailed it. Course of Spiritual Fortitude, the Smite Catcher one, is probably the only one that could bend the game by itself, and you do have a CP if you need it. So if that buff really turning the math is important to you, you have a stratagem, you can guarantee that is inspiring. Almost all of these, it's okay to just roll for it most of the time. And so I think, I hate randomness too. I also love Miracle Dice. But I think the fact that these won't make or break your game most of the time, and if they do, you have an out, it's totally fine. I'm definitely looking at one or two priests for sure. The Dogmata may be the preacher's like 25 points. Like it's pretty easy to find the space with them.
I'm in my Sacred Rose list. I'm bringing the Dogmata and the Dialogus. I'm very proud of my 2 priests at the moment. I will probably be cautioned into 1 after I feel like, just like the Imagifiers, once I realize what I'm doing and I don't feel like I need the safety net, I'll probably go down to 1. But for 2 right now, I'm loving them. And hey guys, we've been playing against Marines for a while with their silly hymns. What are they called? The
Litanies.
chaplain, the
Litanies.
yeah, whatever, the heretic stuff that they do. Like I've played against it a lot, and when they go off, great. When they don't go off, like I've not met a Space Marine player yet that was their only plan. Like if this goes off, I've tabled you. Nah. So I think we just have to embrace that. This is another great benefit, just like blessings.
100%.
All right, I'll roll into Warlord traits since it's right across the page. Inspiring Order. Each time this Warlord tunes a hymn or uses an ability in the command phase that needs a range, you can add 3 to the range of the hymn or ability. It does not affect blessings. I'm just gonna throw it out there because hey, they're not auras. Like I said, I think it would have been nice to have this be +1 to hymns, but extra range is always nice. They also have the following ability: while a friendly order core unit is within 6 inches of the Warlord, they ignore the combat attrition penalty for being below half strength. So GW.
Stop saying fetch, Tim. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, GW really trying to make fetch happen here. Righteous Rage. This is a bonus. This was a buff. Actually,
This is a huge buff.
I was expecting this war trait to get deleted or nerfed, but this is reroll hits and wounds.
That's right. They doubled down.
It's also the mandatory Warlord trait for Morven Vault, because why not?
Yep.
Executioner of Heretics, which is an aura. While an enemy is within 6 inches of the Warlord, subtract 1 from their leadership. And here comes the fetch keyword again. Every time a combat attrition test is taken for that unit, subtract 1 from the combat attrition test.
You got to appreciate they're trying to make it work. Yeah,
they're really trying to make it happen.
There's some product manager that's like, no, guys, trust me, this is the thing.
Well, watch the very last book of 9th edition just be some faction where it just bodies whoever hasn't invested in combat attrition stuff, and then we're just kind of like, oh, this was the end game. The
Night Lord supplement comes out and just breaks the meta.
Yeah, for real. Beacon of Faith. This one did get hit, unfortunately. We were talking about before with Miracle Dice. Command phase of the Warlord is on the battlefield. You gain 1 Miracle Dice. It can only be used when your Warlord performs an act of faith or uses a miraculous ability, and if not used at the start of your next command phase, it is discarded. This Miracle Dice can be used to perform an act of faith, even if another unit from your army has already performed an act of faith. So that is kind of nice. It basically your Warlord has a banner on their backpack, so they have their own personal simulacrum. So that's kind of nice. Indomitable Belief. This is pretty similar. Every time an Order Core Infantry, this is infantry only, but I believe the last one was infantry only anyhow, so no big deal there. The invulnerable save models in that unit received from the Shield of Faith ability is improved by 1 to a maximum of 4 up. So if you're trying to get 6 up Invulnerable Battle Sisters to a 4 up, you do this, and you do the Litany of Enduring Faith. And the last
it's worth noting this is Celestine's new Warlord trait, so that went from a Datasheet ability to a Warlord trait ability for her.
Yeah. I apologize. My son is trying to wrestle with me. Pure of Will is the last one. The Warlord can attempt to deny 1 additional psychic power in your opponent's psychic phase, and you add 3 to the denied of which test taken for the Warlord. Situationally good, but I think we have so many ways to just absolutely dunk on psychic armies that I think you either just save the CP if you're planning to take an extra Warlord trait, or you just take one of the other Warlord traits. But this isn't bad. It's just not as exciting as the other ones.
I feel like for the Warlord traits, in the old book, we can only take 1 and then 1 more of the stratagem. And so you had Indomitable Belief and Beacon of Faith, and it was so hard to take a third one. Maybe you take Righteous Rage sometimes. And you're like, GW, this sucks. We want so many more options. GW's like, great. Your new strategy will let you take up to 2 more for 3 total. And I'm like, amazing. But we're going to make them all worse. I think that 3 of these actually are pretty swing and a miss. Like Inspiring Order, Execution of Heretics, and Pure of Will feel very situational. So we're really down to Beacon, which is a lot worse than it was. Indomitable Belief, which is roughly the same. And then Righteous Rage, which got better. I don't think we're going to be making a ton of choices in this part of the book. Maybe your faction warlord trait. And that's okay. I think there's a missed shot at some real flavor here.
So I think the nice thing, and we're going to do a little callback though, is some of the warlord traits for the orders were actually pretty good. Specifically thinking about Sacred Rose with the fallback and shoot. Fallback and shoot is an extremely strong ability. However, not to bury the lead, in part 2, there is a stratagem that lets us get a similar ability. But it might be worth considering just to lean into some of the faction-specific warlord traits as well.
So, just anecdotal. I've got a couple games in now with Sacred Rose, and I took Beacon of Faith because I'm trying to max out my Miracle Dice Act of Faith for the secondary. I feel pretty comfortable saying Beacon of Faith is not necessary to be successful with Sacred Rose if you want to take the Miracle Dice-based secondary. I have not needed it. I've been keeping track every game of how many Miracle Dice I make. It's not necessary. So it was a trap for me to take. It may be worthwhile to get the secondary with other armies for Sacred Rose. I don't think it's necessary.
I actually, in a test game, took just Beacon of Faith, and I took the secondary. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but I took the secondary with just Beacon of Faith. I was like, can I make this work? And I scored like a 5. It was like pretty rough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So I think you need more than just that juice if you want to be scoring that secondary from the other side. Cool. Anything else on these? John, anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I really want Pure of Will to be cool because I'm pretty sure that there's a Order Minoris that is +3 to deny. And you could theoretically make a Warlord +6 to deny, which sounds so incredibly...
That's
no,
dumb.
it's like I
so
really
dumb.
want to...
A D6
It
plus
is.
6, and then
It's
you
D6
take
plus
Sacred
6
Rise.
to deny.
Dumb in a good
and
way, but that is dumb. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you've deep teched for your meta to just bust somebody's butt. Like,
Could you imagine explaining that to a Grey Knight player after he can't smite you?
and you can deny twice.
I deny the
Yeah,
smite.
exactly.
Why? It doesn't even work. Because the Emperor wills it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think the situation where I would use that is right after the Thousand Sons of Great Knights pre-order, when I just really want to ruin the pre-order for someone. Like, just first time on the table. I've been waiting for like 3 years for Thousand Sons to be good. And then you just see Tim just grinning ear to ear like the Joker, you know? So
You're right, but what you need to do is wait until they painted all their models. So like this is the deep play. Like you have to wait like a good 4 months for them to paint everything, and then the first time the whole painted army's out, be like, so let's play. I found a new rule in my codex. Weird.
You're not going to
long
find me
con.
saying good words about Grey Knights. Yeah. I think just one minor note before we move on, and this is a bit of a meta point, is there's a lot of little weird niche rules in this book, like random hymns that seem situationally good, warlord traits that seem situationally good, sacred rites that you can throw around an individual unit seem situationally good. I think this book will show its depth through a number of metas. Like, I think that as metas evolve and shift, we will be able to put different counters out to work at them. So I think for those Real Sisters fans who are willing to flex their lists a bit, you're going to always be competitive and always have a game, almost no matter what the meta is, which is exciting for me.
yeah, I'm going through all these rules, and I'm literally kind of thinking about every single 9th edition codex that is unreleased so far, and I'm kind of like, well, I don't like this rule now, but when X faction gets their book, I'm gonna come back and revisit this secondary or this prayer or warlord chair or something, and I think that's kind of cool.
All right, team. We are down for this episode to just relics and secondaries. For everyone's note, we are going to defer stratagems and data sheets to a part 2 because, in typical Sister Act fashion, pulling Florida men in with us, we're going to go way deep on this stuff, far beyond the rational world. We've drawn two chumps with us. So we're going to finish out relics and secondaries, and then you can hope for a part 2 where we cover the rest of the book. So, relics. Rob, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of relics, and it's probably not worth reading through all of them. But I will call out The Book of St. Lucius did not change. It's still 3 inches to the bear. Well, I don't believe it changed. Still 3 inches to the bear's aura abilities. The Brazier of Eternal Flame is basically still the same idea, and it's not a profile still, right? It's an action. Yep. So the upgraded one you get with Sacred Rose turns it into a weapon profile. But this is still
so Brazier changed. It used to be -2 to cast. Now it's any doubles as of perils, which is, different.
Yep. The Blade of Saint Eleanor is new, and it is a Blessed Blade. So you have to buy the Blessed Blade. It's +2 strength, -3 AP, 3 damage. It is a great weapon. But however, if you want to be a beat stick, I still think that taking the blessing that gives you +1 strength, +1 damage, and then optionally lets you just wreck somebody's day is the better call, because at that point you still end up with a damage 3 Blessed Blade that you can do all kinds of mean things with.
I like how Games Workshop had the Blade of Admonition in the last book, and then they changed it and moved it to Crusade, and then they gave us a new blade with a new name, which is exactly the same stat line as the old Blade of Admonition. That's adorable.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm just glad that they're paying attention.
Wrath of the Emperor is still around. It is pistol 4, strength 5, AP -1, 2 damage. It replaces a bolt pistol. I think it's still a great gun to put on somebody if you have a spare relic laying around, but I don't think that this is the same auto take because so much of the army moved to shooting potential now. The need to have a Canoness or a Palatine that's really standing back with a pistol 4 probably is diminished. I think this is probably the wrong spend of a relic.
It also was AP3 as Bloody Rose because it was 2 and then 1 more. Now it's just AP1. Bloody Rose doesn't even affect it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Litanies of Faith. Go ahead.
I know.
I was just saying that part's tragic. I really wanted the bolt pistol to be cool.
Yeah, the Marine murdering bolt pistol. Yeah.
So you guys are going to have to help comment on Litanies of Faith. So it used to be once per turn. Now it's once per battle round. If the bear is on the battlefield and you gain a miracle dice, you can reroll the dice before adding it to your pool.
Jury's out for me on this one. I think with miracle dice being less prevalent, I think that maybe being able to reroll, it's kind of like, when you hit that sign that says, hey, last fuel or last gas for 200 miles. That's kind of the same vibe again. Like, hey, this is your last miracle dice for 200 miles. So when you roll your miracle dice and it's that 2, you're just kind of like, like this might be worth rolling it. The fact you can only use it half as often initially kind of just triggered a sense of revulsion in me. But the fact that you are generating miracle dice less often has kind of made me think that maybe I was a little too harsh on it. You don't get to use it as often, but there are less opportunities to use it, and the opportunities you have to use it are going to be more impactful. Whereas in 8th edition, with the 8th edition book, you used it like the first 2 battle rounds, and then you usually kind of stopped using it right around battle round 3, maybe battle round 4, because at that point you were firing on all cylinders. So this is one I'm going to play test because I think this one might actually be better than we think it's going to be.
So, Tim, your jury might be out, but that might just be because they're slow. My jury came back. I think this is an auto take. Like,
okay,
if you're not Sacred Rose, if you're Sacred Rose and you're Rob, and just like rolling in miracle dice and use them as blankets and decoration, that's fine. But for us plebs here who try to like punch and shoot instead, I think that you see so few miracle dice that if you just like get 2 this turn and they're both 2s, that just is so bad. Getting that chance to turn one of them into something better is actually really, really important. Cute side effects. Some people argue that the old one, you couldn't use it at the start of the battle round one because it said player turn and when does the battle round begin. You can use that on any miracle dice now for sure. I think given the paucity of miracle dice, this is an auto take for 1 CP. In every game I've taken it, there's not Sacred Rose. I've been very, very pleased that I had it because at turn 4, turn 5, you're still out of miracle dice. You still don't have any. It's not like you have a reserve of 6s where it no longer makes any sense. So I quite like it.
Well, that was going to be my only comment, and Mitch, you nailed it. So I took Litanies of Faith, Sacred Rose, and all the lists I've been playing, and I'm in a 6-week TTS tournament where now I'm committed to this list. Litanies of Faith was a trap. It is a 1 CP useless spend because, like you said, I'm rolling in Miracle Dice. I've got a blanket of them. I just live in them. Mantle of Ophelia. It used to be a model with this relic, has a 3+ invulnerable save, which was super sweet. Now, I'm going to argue I like it better. I'm not sure if you guys are going to agree. Each time an attack is allocated to the bear, the damage characteristic of this attack is changed to 1. I think that is just fantastic with all the nonsense D3+3 garbage damage running around. Am I taking it every game as an auto take? No. Do I love it? Yes. I love this change for Mantle of Ophelia.
My new life goal is to convince a knight player to fire a Castellan's Volcano Lance at my Canoness with a Mantle of Ophelia and turn that 19 damage shot into a 1. That's my new life goal.
You are
Don't listen to
thinking
this
way
show.
too small, my friend. You need to convince them to fire the Valiant's harpoon at you.
Yes!
Oh, glorious.
Well, that could do mortals, but I'll take the 10 damage down to 1. Yeah.
So I'm looking at like my kind of local meta or events I'm going to and everything, and I think the situation where I'm most likely to use a Canoness on accident or without me planning to sacrifice her is honestly just a random squad of witches getting into her, and this does nothing there.
Yeah, it does.
So I want to be clear one more time with my statement, because I think I'm categorically correct. And so I'm going to challenge you guys now.
Ooh.
Is it an auto take? No. Did they make the Mantle of Ophelia better? I'm going to say hell yes. They made it better.
Oh, yeah. Now it's a thing we can talk about, not okay, whatever.
Right. Because a 3-up sounds great, but you're still failing 33% of your saves. This basically nullifies anything that's above damage 1. I just think it's tasty, especially if you combo it with being able to get a extra wound back every time you do an act of faith. It just becomes nonsense. It's kind of fun. Triptych of the Manchurian Crusade. It used to have a very simple roll, and it was a model with this relic. When they lose a wound, roll a dice, and you get 5-up. The wound is lost. So 5-up, feel no pain. Now, there are several things it does. So first, it's Sanctified or Cult Imperialis. So they put some restrictors on it. I'm not sure why. Add 1 to the bear's toughness. That's cool. The bear has a 4-up invuln. That's cool. And once per turn, whenever you fail your first saving throw, the damage characteristic of that attack is changed to 0. Yet again, is it something I'm taking in every list? No. Is it better than what it was? I would say yes. I think this is a pretty fun one.
Check your keywords. It doesn't work on a lot of stuff.
That's right. Make your keyword list.
I really wanted to take this on the Dogmata, and then I saw that I couldn't, and that was heart crushing for me.
That was a hard moment.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can take it on your 25-point priest. Come on.
Do we want to talk about the relic you actually can take on a Dogmata?
Yes, we do.
Sure. Do it.
We're doing it. We're flipping the page.
We're ready.
Flipping the page. It's John time.
That's a great song.
I am in complete disrespect for the Sisters Out podcast. I'm going to read these relics in order. We're going to start with the Iron Surplice of Saint Estella. This is an Adeptus Sororitas model only, so a Dogmata, but not a preacher. Add 1 to the wounds characteristic of this model. It basically has transhuman, and the bear has a save characteristic of 2+. There you go.
It's very good.
Hello, Mitch. You reminded me to tell Tim that he was wrong when we got to this. Oh, thank you, Siri. Yeah. So here's the play, people. I've been holding on to this for 2 hours. The back half of that joke. So what you do is you take your Canoness, you give her the Iron Surplice, so she's sitting on a 2-up save. She's Valorous Heart, so she's ignoring AP1 and degrading AP2. She's got 6 wounds now on a 2-up save. She's got Transhuman. So then you give her the Valorous Heart Warlord trait, so she's also got a 5-up Feel No Pain. And then you give her the Miraculous ability where she's healing up D3 wounds every turn. That girl is not going to die. That is a 2-up, 4-up, 5-up, transhuman, ignore AP1, reduce AP2, self-healer model. Get wrecked.
Mitch, congratulations. You just created a 105-point Custodes model.
Yep. my rebuttal to you would be in a typical game of GT Pack mission. How many points is that girl going to give you that you invested all those resources in?
Your questions aren't appreciated here, Tim.
That's right. You're missing the full memory of this.
It is that you can definitely do some really annoying stuff, and I think you can definitely potentially really punish someone who undercommits into killing that model. So yeah, there could be some funny stuff there. Is it the best thing you could be doing? I don't think so.
The answer is no.
But you could really mess with your opponent's target priority, and anytime you can mess with your opponent's target priority in the decision making, I think you always have a puncher's chance. So
if you want to be a gatekeeper at a GT, this is your list.
She might survive 120 attacks from an Orc Boy mob. That's actual right. Math.
That might be very relevant soon.
All right, cool.
All right, let's roll on over to the Ecclesiarch's Fury. This is a damage 2 relic chainsword because apparently we lost one of those, and it is now +2 strength, AP -3. This all sounds familiar. Damage 2. However, instead of getting any kind of extra attacks like a normal chainsword, the bearer subtracts 1 from their hit rolls and adds 1 to their wound rolls. So it's strength 5 +1 to wound on a typical sister battle.
I'll be honest, I kind of like it with Blazing Ire, +1 attack, advanced charge. I think you can do a little something here, baby.
I was thinking this is like if I'm not taking Vol and I get the rerolls, because I really don't like hitting on 3s with a character.
Doesn't feel great now.
Yeah, it's pretty good with the him. Like it's pretty good with the self buffing him.
That's so. I will say that against most, if you're going into late game character duels, you'll be hitting on 3s, but you will probably be winning on 2s, and so you are getting even though transitive property of multiplication is +1 -1 is the same. You are getting information on how you're doing and how many saves you're about to force later on in the attack sequence. So potentially some play there. I'm not going to go out of my way to take this, but I don't like it. But it basically feels like they took Beneficence and they split it into 2 swords.
Thank you.
So
that was what I was going to say. Yeah. This is Becky with the bad blade. This is her sister Belinda, who rolls around. She's almost as good, but she's not good enough to actually call back.
Yeah, like Blenda's the one at all the family functions who's like, oh yeah, and me too. Like everyone knows she's not as great as Becky, but she really wants to be in the eyes of her parents.
Her Mustang. She got a Mustang for her birthday. That's why she gets to come to the parties.
She's the one that when you ask about, they go, well, she's nice.
Yeah.
Great personality. But the Ecclesiarch's Fury has a great personality, is what we've settled on.
All right, Redemption.
She's funny.
Amazing. Right. Redemption is a plasma pistol that draws a line when you shoot it, and you can't overcharge it, but it's already the overcharge profile. That's what it does. It's still a 12-inch plasma pistol. It's the same stats as the plasma pistol. There's a complicated rule about drawing a line when you shoot someone. The only reason I like this relic actually is that when you make an attack with this weapon, if it hits a score, you draw a straight line between the closest part of this model's base and that of the closest model in the target unit. And the only thing I like is that it's not the closest visible in the target unit. So you could shoot an Orc Boy on the far left, and then you go straight through the building into the Orc Boy behind the wall, and maybe you catch a character in between. And if that character has already perils, your opponent is going to have no idea what's hitting them.
Man, yeah, that is like the most corner case thing I think I've ever heard, and I have heard some corner cases, but yeah, sure, that is a thing.
See, I actually think this is worse than a plasma pistol, because my favorite part of a plasma pistol is overheating and killing myself.
Yeah, we know. Yeah. We know, John.
Yeah. I think
suicide is badass.
I pulled that off once, and it felt awesome, but I think that play might actually be kind of a thing in the past.
This pistol.
I don't roll enough dice to have once.
This is not a hot take. This pistol's a hard pass. Thank you.
Yep. This is so bad.
That's a cold, lukewarm, and cold take all at once.
Yep. All right. Well, there are more, and some of them are better. The Sigil Ecclesiasticus, which I pronounced correctly on the first try, thank you very much, is for a priest model only, which includes the Sisters of Priests. And they know an additional hymn, and they can chant an additional hymn. which is cute because you can use this to give a creature something besides War Hymn, but also like, why don't you just take something else at that point? But it's a very good relic, though. I think this is why I think I only need one creature equivalent. Just one Dogmata with the Sigil Ecclesiasticus. That feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's hard not to take it in a lot of lists, unless you go the Rob route of taking 14 priests in your army.
Yet again, I'm going to tell you that I'm learning as I go. I took 2 priests and then also the Sigil Ecclesiasticus.
Kind of him.
Because I really had a plan, and it's turning out that much is not
You just had
necessary.
turns whether you were just rolling the ends just to roll them.
That's basically it. Yeah.
This guy Chance. Yeah.
I'll definitely like this, especially when Thousand Sons of Grey Knights come out, where you go to a GT and you're kind of expecting to face a Psychic army 1 out of 5 games, but then the other 4 games, the Psychic hymn does nothing for you. So you have the option to pivot to the other one, and you don't have to take 2 priests for that reason.
In a lot of my list, I have a single Dogmata for my priest, maybe also like a cheap preacher. But that Dogmata often ends up with this relic, because then she can shout 2 hymns. She knows 3 with War Hymn. Like, that's a lot of value.
Yeah, that's great. War Hymn, like Bloody Rose Dogmata, War Hymn, the Hymn of Angriness, and then the Hymn of Anti-Psycherness. And then now you have a great toolkit character.
All right, well, let's make our way down to the next one. Let's talk about the Blessings of Sebastian Thor. This one was alluded to earlier. It's an Adeptus Sororitas model only, and before you determine which sacred rites are active for your army, select 2 sacred rites, and until the end of the battle, that sacred rites are active for the bearer's unit instead of those that are active for the rest of your army. That's weird. Why does it say the bearer's unit instead of just the bearer? Because there's a stratagem later, and you can give this to a sergeant. Because I don't think we're ever putting this. I don't think this is ever going on a character.
Let me tell you what you are going to do. You're going to overthrow the tyranny of Bloody Rose, not take it in your list. You're going to bring 10 Zephyrim. You're going to put Blessings of Sebastian Thor on that Zephyrim Superior. Yes. And then she is advancing and charging or exploding sixing. She's whatever you want sing. And you're still keeping a lot of that power without needing Bloody Rose. I think it's a great relic. I think you're going to see it a lot.
I like this a lot. I really wish you could take this on a Repentia Superior and it would extend to a Repentia. It cannot. However, I like it on Sacrosanct and I like it on Zephyrim. And I think if you're running Arch and Shroud, you probably actually would want to take +1 advance and charge to really lean to Arch and Shroud speed. But then you put this on a melee unit to pop exploding 6s when you need it, to make that little extra boost of not being Bloody Rose. Or vice versa, you're running Bloody Rose and the Zephyrim Superior or a Sacrosanct, you took an exploding 6s army wide. Victor is popping off behind me right now.
He's excited like I am for this relic. It's awesome.
But on that,
that was Victor. That wasn't Rob. Sorry, confused.
But you would take +1 advance and charge on that key turn, and then having Zephyrim get Morven buffs, rocket across the field, and have the pennant for +1 to charge, and then reroll charge of the pennant. I think there's a lot of good play here, and I think this is a relic we'll see in the future.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, this feels like a very safe choice in a lot of lists. Next up, we have the Simulacrum Sanctorum, aka the Imagifier still exists, guys. We promise. Imagifier model only. At the start of the battle round, you select 2 tails for the bear instead of 1. That's what it does. It's good.
Yep,
it's Imagifier. All right, so next up we have the Simulacrum Sanctorum, which is basically GW's reminder that the Imagifier still does exist. It's like the generic, elite character stratagem. You take an elite character, you do the one thing it does, but a little bit better. If you take this relic, your Imagifier knows 2. It knows 2 of the hymns, the songs that it sings, instead of 1, and that's fine, But I don't think since this is Imagifier only. And I don't think it's going to be that necessary, but it's kind of a little worse than the stratagem from before, because you used to be able to do it during deployment, so you could tailor to your opponent a little bit more. Now you have to commit to it in list building, and I don't think most people are going to want to commit to an Imagifier in list building, let alone a relic for her. So I don't think this one is going to do much, but it's very much, it does what it says it does on the tin. If you wanted a double Imagifier, that's it. This is what you got.
Yeah, you weren't completely turned off.
Yeah, there's this is very one-dimensional, but it does its dimension. The last relic for the book is the Chaplet of Sacrifice. This one is Sororitas only, and once per battle, if you're selected to use an Epic D stratagem, that stratagem costs 0 command points, which means I'm going to have to actually read the little colorful boxes on top of my stratagems now, because I usually don't. Each time the bear makes an attack, you reroll the hit roll. That's cool. When the bear is destroyed, do not remove that model from play, and at the end of the phase, you can either shoot as if you're shooting phase or fight as if you're your fight phase. And then after you resolve the destroyed model's attacks, it's then removed. That is not terrible. That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, that's not terrible. I don't hate it. I do not hate it. I need to go reread the Epic Deed stratagems, perhaps even in part 2, and figure out which of those I actually care enough about to think about this. I'm thinking what this could go on a Rapturous Blows Blessed Blade Candace, because she doesn't really need a melee route. So now she fights on death, which is cool. And rerolling the hit roll, that's definitely not terrible. But none of this is really exciting me. I don't plan on killing a character and then not standing her up when I guess with the Chapel of Sacrifice. Although, you know what? Now I should check and see if the stand up on death is an Epic Deed stratagem.
It's excluded.
It's explicitly excluded.
Are you kidding me?
Excluded, yeah. Exactly.
In the rule. Yeah.
GW2 John 1 right at the end of the episode.
Gosh
darn it.
They just started so strong.
They hit a 3 with 0 seconds left. Gosh darn it. Wow.
I think this is B. I think this is B tier, potentially A, maybe up to A minus. As we start going into stratagems, and we really start kind of chewing on the bone a little bit. It's got the makings of a good relic. It's just going to live or die by how impactful and how often we use those other stratagems. That's my opinion.
My take is that this is not one of the best 3 relics, and I don't care about 4th place through 20th place. So
because you get 3 relics max.
Because I get 3.
Actually, that's not true, because the relative to a sergeant is different, so you can have up to 3 of those as well. So
that's true.
Yeah, you can go more, but yeah.
All right, 6 relics. Let's meme.
Let's make that.
I feel like it's
list.
You put the chaplet next to the Iron Circlet, next to the triptych, next to the Mantle of Phil. You're like, these are a lot of similar-ish power things that maybe I take one of. At some point.
If you kill my canoness, you're going to regret it. Okay. Unless you try really hard.
Yeah, well, you're not killing my Valus Heart Canoness. That ain't happening.
Yeah, sir.
All right.
No one could kill that.
Any closing thoughts on the relics before I think we close the whole episode?
No, I think I'm good there.
Yeah, I think the relics are fine. I think the warlord traits are fine. I think when we see in part 2, I think the real strength of this book is going to be in the data sheets and the stratagems.
Yep. I think don't overspend. Don't buy the Blade of St. Eleanor and Wrath of the Emperor and the Book of St. Lucius and it's going to put you into trouble. But there's some good stuff here. And there's some good utility.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of interesting things here, and I think some of these, especially with that stratagem to put a rock on sergeant, there's going to be a lot of useful plays here. But as before, there's no one. I don't think there's any one relic that I'm just like, this is the absolute auto take all the time, every time.
Yep. And that's not bad either for a book.
All right. Well, Mitch, Rob, John, thank you all for joining us, making this part 1 of this crossover episode happen. Really excited to have you guys on. We'll actually be talking about stratagems and data sheets and maybe some possible builds and some thoughts now that we had a couple games put on the table here in part 2. That should be recorded approximately about 2 weeks from now. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you all then.